For August 8th, 2022 to order. We're going to go into executive session, and we'll return to open session no later than 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I so move pursuant to Mass General Law 38, Section 21A3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions, and the chair has determined to open session that it would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position.
Okay. Moved. Seconded?
And you're going to declare?
Second.
Yeah, after the vote, right?
Yeah, second it.
Okay. Roll call vote. Larry?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
I'm an aye, and it is a vote, and I so declare it. Board of Selectmen's meeting for August 8th, 2022, back to order. We started tonight's meeting at 5:45 in executive session, where we discussed union negotiations. We did settle with two of the unions. We ratified contracts for SEIU and IAMAW, which is the Water Department employees. With that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comment announcement? Are you getting up to tell us it's your birthday?
No, I'm not. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Cindy.
Do we get to sing now?
Thank you, Michael. No, we're not going to sing, Larry.
Yes, we are. Off key.
No. Actually, like I do every year, I put the new magazine in front of you all. So this is the 2022 magazine. I don't know where the camera is, Jamie, but I'll just fly it around here. There are some downstairs as well as our office, and I'll be dropping them off at the community center. We also have added a couple of off-Cape locations. New this year is Logan at Southwest, South Station, the Cape Flyer, which is the train that comes down from Boston to the Cape. TF Green is a repeat, and as is Bass Pro Gillette, and they are flying out of here. We print 20,000 every year, and we're already working on 2023. The other thing I want to mention is the water fill station that is around the town. We also have one at the chamber, so people walking around after shopping in the shops or dining are thirsty, want some water, they can now get it down at the chamber with their bottles. So I think it was, where'd Dan go? Oh, there he is. It was Patrick Otten, and that was the warrant that he had brought forward, and we're happy to partner with the town on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment announcement?
Good evening, Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent. For those who are unaware, I just wanted to announce that the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners has implemented a mandatory outdoor water ban. Hand watering is allowed between the hours of midnight and 8 a.m. or 5 to 9 p.m. And just as we are getting some questions, so just as a frame of reference, hand watering means if you're holding it in your hand, you're hand watering. If you're not holding it in your hand, it's not considered hand watering.
Thank you, Dan.
Michael, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Dan, just while we have you here, because I've gotten a few calls and I've had to delineate just so that you can say to the public, places like Stop and Shop, when they're seeing them sprinkle, your watering ban did or did not cover people that had private wells that were drawing off of.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So the Water Department has jurisdiction over private wells, irrigation or private drinking water wells. So they're out of our span of control. For those who are looking to report a violation, there is a section on our webpage, but just know that we are verifying that against the private well database before reaching out to those properties.
But you're still encouraging.
But yes, we're certainly still encouraging, as private wells or public, they're all straws in the same glass, so.
Thank you, Dan. Larry?
Mine was the same question that Don had, because I gotten also some questions about private versus public.
Great, thank you. Anyone else for public comment announcement? Chief?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you've got my memo in front of you for another personnel issue. I'm happy to introduce Jessica Ferreira, who is our next candidate to be hired. As you're aware, we are struggling with maintaining our staffing due to a number of retirements and long-term injuries, et cetera. But Jessica comes to us with 2 years of policing experience already from Hopkinton PD, originally from the Cape area, decided to relocate down here after working at Hopkinton. And it is to our benefit because as you know, that means no police academy, no wait for the police academy, no additional training whatsoever, except for maybe an abbreviated field training program. So Jessica comes to us with she's going to be the third member of Harwich PD who is a graduate of the Fitchburg program, which is a very challenging 6-year actually, right, just program, 4-year degree in criminal justice, and then as soon as you graduate with that degree, you go into a full-time police academy, you come out with an academy certification, and then Jessica went to work for Hopkinton and then went immediately back and earned her master's degree. So she comes to us fully trained with a master's degree. We couldn't be happier, so it's going to be an abbreviated FTO program, and then she'll go on the schedule to help mitigate our staffing issues.
Great, great, welcome.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Comment?
So, yeah, well, great credentials, but that means you get no rest. Is that the bottom line?
It's perfect.
Mr. Chairman, the board may want to consider taking item A
I'm planning
from
on that.
consent agenda. Thank you.
Yep, great.
Just to
Thank you.
point out that Harwich is vacation paradise. Keep remembering that.
Can I get a motion on the consent agenda, item A, please?
I move that we approve the chief of police's recommendation to appoint Jessica Ferreira to full-time police officer.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe. Welcome aboard. Okay, we're going to go on to the presentations and a public hearing. We'll start with the presentation by Doreen Leggett.
We can put it right back under control now.
That's why,
Do I stand here or do I sit?
whatever makes you more comfortable. You pick.
I could be comfortable with public speaking, but stand here. My name's Doreen with the Fisherman's Alliance, and I have Brian Sharon, who lives in Harwich, and he's on our board, and then Stephanie Sykes, who's a fisherman in Harwich. And I know the harbor master is behind me, so I'm hoping that at the end, maybe they could say a couple things, if possible. Some of you might be familiar with the Fisherman's Alliance, but I'm going to run through who we are for people who might not know us as well. The Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance was formed in 1991, and it was started by a group of fishermen who were worried the Cape's small boat fleets would disappear if managers didn't start paying more attention to the environment and sustainable fishing. 30 years later, we just had our anniversary last year. Our belief is much the same, and we take our lead from our fishermen members and are involved in advocacy, research, education, and policy to make sure local fisheries are not just a vital part of the Cape's past and present, but also its future. And that is why we partnered with the State Division of Marine Fisheries and UMass Boston's Urban Harbors Institute on port-by-port profiles and analysis of the Massachusetts commercial fishery, which was published last year. The report provides an overview of commercial fishing in Massachusetts, and for the first time describes conditions in each municipality with a commercial home port. The report is built around survey results from the harbor master and fishermen, as well as state landings data, and it highlights both the important role that commercial fishing plays in the state economy, as well as the access and infrastructure challenges that limit the industry's current operations as well as its growth. Our visit tonight is part of an effort by us and the Division of Marine Fisheries to visit every town that has a commercial port on the Cape to elevate the awareness and fisheries profile everywhere. This is either my 4th or 5th town, so thank you for having me. One of the reasons why the state published the report is because many people don't understand the enormous economic value that commercial fisheries have. Last year, our state's commercial fisheries were valued at $802 million, so that's last year, $802 million, which is an incredible amount of money. And that was ex-vessel, meaning the total amount fishermen were paid for their catch. All species before that harvest was resold in markets or restaurants. Just for comparison, that's more than the value of all the agricultural crops in South Carolina, pretty much the same value as the agricultural crops in Alabama, more valuable than all the tangerine and mandarins together in the entire country, and only a few million less than the value of tobacco grown across the United States. And obviously, seafood is much healthier than tobacco. The Cape is a huge contributor to that number. We have many small ports, but added together, they exceed the value of Gloucester, which is the second most lucrative port in Massachusetts. New Bedford is the first, and it's actually the most valuable port in the entire country, just to give you a sense of how important Massachusetts is. So Gloucester was 53 million and we were 73 million. And those numbers have only grown since the state compiled them. The Cape is also the only spot where all the towns still have a commercial fishing industry. Some ports off Cape, such as Weymouth and Quincy, are kind of losing their industry. Harwich is a port that's growing in importance, and I have some numbers that I think you guys have in your packet, but I'm just going to run through them really quickly. There were 76 permanent fishermen with a Harwich address, 91 vessels with a Harwich home port, 1,287 trips landing in Harwich, 129 active permanent fishermen landing in Harwich, and 20 active dealers purchasing in Harwich. So there was 1.5 million pounds of catch, and the value of that was $3.2 million, and that was 2018. But I just got the state audited its numbers from last year, and I just got them on Friday. And Harwich grew an incredible amount, which I have. These like hot off the press numbers. So the active permanent fishermen landing in Harwich went from 129 to 172. There goes my voice. And the value of the ex-vessel value went to 4.5 million. So that's 4.5 million last year for Harwich alone, which is a pretty incredible number. And a lot of that has to do with sea scallops and also lobster and summer flounder, who saw their values increase. Those changes required fishermen being nimble and smart and changing up business plans to take advantage of direct sales, which I'm sure you guys know about, which is off the boat. Fisheries will change over the years, and fishermen can capitalize on those changes as long as working waterfronts and the infrastructure is protected, because once it is lost, it is difficult, if not impossible, to get back. So you have to maintain and protect it. That loss will reverberate through the entire community, because what fishermen make stays in the community. It comes back in fuel, it comes back in insurance, it comes back in bread, it stays. As one of my colleagues says, he's fond of saying this, the multiplier effect of these figures is phenomenal, and it creates a year-round community of people who are blue, who respect the environment, and who try to hold our towns together. They are sophisticated, independent, entrepreneurial spirits with 6- and 7-figure investments. There are a variety of ways towns can support the commercial fisheries. For instance, Chatham and Harwich, Provincetown and Sandwich dedicate berthing spaces and other facilities to commercial fishing. Strengthening the fleet, Harwich and also Chatham have reduced fees for commercial vessels, as do Orleans, Eastham, and Provincetown. There are other things that need to be protected as well. Perhaps fishermen need to store their gear. They might need to store the gear at their residence, and that use is protected in Orleans, and that's something that you have to keep in mind as regulations come up. As communities work to balance competing uses for their waterfronts, information about existing conditions, for example, the size of local fleets, challenges such as dredging and parking, and opportunities, including regional collaborations, can help decision makers, which are obviously you guys, ensure that the needs of fishing communities are met. Those who filled out the survey in Harwich mentioned the need for dredging, additional hoists, lack of dockage space, need for additional parking. The Fishermen's Alliance is willing to help the town, and we can help when just ask us for letters of support with grant funding. We're also working with the towns, the county, and state on another need documented in the study, which is dredging. Senator Sear was able to get a $75,000 amendment into the budget that would provide research funds for winter flounder to see when they're spawning and maybe widen the dredging window, which is now based on outdated information, so there'll be more time to get the dredge into town, which I know that you're working on. So that was, I know I ran through that quickly, but it's important, and I just wanted to do that. I didn't know if Brian or Stephanie wanted to say something quickly, or, thank you.
Thank you.
Off the cuff. I know Doreen already introduced me, but I'm Stephanie Sykes. I grew up in Harwich, and I live in Harwich still. And I work on the Peggy B out of Witchmere. We target conch and black sea bass right now. But I just wanted to thank the harbor master and you all for listening to Doreen's presentation. I do work part-time for Fisherman's Alliance right now, in addition to fishing full-time. So I'm pretty busy, but I'm really grateful that Harwich does have commercial space, and I really like to see that continue. It's support that obviously has tremendous economic value, as demonstrated by her presentation, but I think one of the things that's not fully encompassed by that report in reporting the ex-vessel values, again, ex-vessel value, that's just what you land, so we get X dollars a pound for however many pounds. That's the only multiplication for that. That doesn't include it going to local restaurants or our diesel mechanics, our fuel, any of those things that are shoreside support for the industry. And I think that multiplication factor really amplifies the value in such an important way for our blue economy. But really hope to see commercial space be maintained in our Harwich ports, because as I look toward being an entrepreneur and owning my own fishing business, that's definitely really important to me personally, but really important to the fabric of our culture as a fishing community. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Sharon. I've been in the Alliance Board for a number of years now. I first came to the Cape in my teens, and I've been a homeowner here for 22 years now in Harwich. I also have a son and my daughter-in-law who now also live in Harwich, relocated to Harwich. And I've always believed that some of the key things that make the Cape unique is that it has an active small boat fishing industry, and it contributes greatly to our culture and our economy. Doreen and Steph both spoke about what the Alliance does in terms of advocacy. I just wanted to do a brief discussion of what's something that the Alliance has done more recently that is outside of the advocacy arena, so to speak. In 2020, the Alliance launched an ambitious program that was in response really to the fishing and food security challenge presented by COVID-19. That initiative is called Small Boats, Big Taste. This single ongoing initiative accomplishes two goals. It helps independent fishermen stay on the water, and it supplies food banks around the region with a nutritious haddock chowder, and at the same time serves a growing number of people who need good, ready-to-serve meal. Why haddock chowder, you may ask? Well, smaller haddock are plentiful in our waters, but they do not command a strong price because their fillets are small. But however, that also makes them perfect for haddock chowder, which has been very popular in the Northeast historically. So with the help of major philanthropic support, the Alliance guarantees a fisherman a fair price for landing haddock, ensures a steady buyer for the fishermen, and keeps independent fishermen at work. Fishermen's Alliance manages all aspects of the program in partnership with fishermen, distributors, processors, and manufacturers. The product is shipped to regional food banks, institutions, and retail outlets. The preservative-free chowder is delivered frozen, so it requires no other preparation besides thawing and heating. And all the net proceeds are reinvested to strengthen and expand the initiative. Since the summer of 2020, the Small Boats Big Taste program has produced more than 1.3 million servings of chowder and donated it to the region's food banks. As part of the Grow Local, Buy Local movement, this product is to be celebrated for great quality and a great mission, keep American fishermen at sea, and proceeds help feed America's hungry. So in addition to the original haddock chowder program, the program now includes a unique Provençal fish stew made with skate and vegetables and tomato base, dairy-free, gluten-free broth. Skate is a sustainable, delicious, and already one of the primary target goals of the local fleets. Then you may ask, well, why skate? Well, skate are mostly exported, subjecting the fishermen to buyer restrictions in the vagaries of the international foreign markets. This fish now has a local, larger outlet as part of the Small Boats Big Taste initiative. In the future, the program may be expanded to other kinds of value-added products as well, based on the needs of the fishermen and the seasonal availability of fish and shellfish. I just think this program demonstrates the ingenuity of the Alliance staff to come up with solutions to challenges faced by our fishing industry, as well as serving other community needs. So thank you for your attention, for all of us. Appreciate it, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to be able to speak with you. And if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. The board want to hear from the harbor master before you ask any questions or make comments. John, you want to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Rendon, Harbor Master. I'd just like to, thank Fishermen's Alliance for their report, and they've been great to work with. They really supported via letter of recommendation when we were seeking a grant to redo the town pier, Wichita Harbor Town Pier, in which we got a significant seaport grant to do that. And then when we redid the marina at Saquatucket, again, they were a strong voice of support when we were going through some of the congressionals to try to get that program through the Army Corps, and then also the seaport grant process. We got significant grant money for that. So their work on the whole dredging piece of it is important. Fortunately, we've had opportunities to get dredge money from the state for for dredging our harbors. We've had it 4 years in a row, and I think your strong voice to support that is necessary and important, and I appreciate it. And then the whole winter flounder study is a huge issue in my mind. Expanding that amount of time throughout the year that we can dredge is really important, and I hope that that continues. I think Harwich is very supportive of our commercial fleet. We spend a lot of time within the department to make sure that our bulkheads are cleared for the fleet to be able to come and offload. We do have designated slips and moorings specific for the commercial fleet. As you know, with the upgrade of our marina, we now open up our entire marina for the fleet for 7, almost 8 months out of the year. Many fishermen come from Chatham and outlying areas and operate out of Saquatucket throughout the winter because we have a facility that supports them. So yeah, I'm real proud of what we as a town do to support our local fleet, not only in Harwich, but Cape Wide, and it's my hope that we continue that direction. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Questions, comments from the board? Larry?
Yeah, I have one question. Several years ago, we were changing some of the licenses to commercial fishermen to allow them to do recreational fishing on the same boat, as I remember it. And that's because the business has gone downhill. So this is a very positive report that has picked one up. What changed to, I guess, improve the situation? May not be the right term, but obviously we have more fishermen than that we were talking about at that time.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Ballantyne was referring to is we put in place a policy that allowed the commercial fleet to be able to, those with what we call an A permit, which is a year-round commercial permit, in their off-season, or if they were changing their fishery, or for whatever circumstance they felt they needed to, that they would be allowed to also charter, to take charters on board and, customers for hire, and still go out and catch some of the type of tuna or striped bass or sea bass or that type of stuff as a way to augment their income. What has changed since then? I think we still have some commercial folks who do that periodically, but I think the Fisherman Alliance can speak to why such a great increase in the landings and the trajectory upward.
Yeah, I mean that to be great news. But
Yeah, it's great news.
The ignorant question, this probably won't be my first nor my last, is are skate dogfish?
Our skate?
What kind of dogfish?
What about dogfish? Yeah, go ahead. Come on.
Well, because
I didn't hear.
I understand the dogfish are big, but they all go to Europe, and that's always a question.
Yeah, I'll address your first question too about permits. So I think something that we've supported, a lot of what I've spent my time on at Fisherman's Alliance. I took a hiatus from fishing and worked there full time for a bit, and a huge part of what I focused on was the small boats, big taste, and fisherman training. So as we train the next generation of fishermen and get people into this industry, we want to make sure that they're set up to be supported and to be successful. And one of the elements of that is to support diversified businesses. So what John spoke to, being able to diversify into charter to supplement your business, that's something that we would definitely support. That's part of the diversification. It's still being you're still a commercial business, you're still running a commercial fishing business, and if that's something, I know my captain personally has taken advantage of that flexibility in between. We run science trips, we'll do a lot of commercial fishing, but sometimes if the water's really warm right now, you gotta move a lot of gear, so it's nice to be able to take a scientist out for a day, or if he needs to run a charter or something. Definitely, thank you, support that diversification. Dogfish are a species of shark. The species that we have locally are spiny dogfish. The limit went up. We used to be 6,000 pounds, 7,500 pounds now. This year it just went up because it's very sustainable to catch. There's a lot of it out there. It's competing with other species like cods. We rarely ever hit the amount of fish that's really sustainable to catch. We're typically under that, so that's why they've raised the limit of what we're actually allowed to land per day. It's an open access fishery, so that means that anybody can get a permit. It's not something that you have to invest $100,000 to get a permit for, so it's something that if you're getting into fishing, great one to get into. Typically, you're correct, they are exported, usually go to become fish and chips in England. They're different from skate skate is an elasmobranch, so related to sharks, skates, rays, that sort of family. Skates, the fillets come from the wings, so they look sort of like a ray. Full utilization, so when we use them for the fish stew that was mentioned, for the small boats big taste program, the wings are filleted, go into that, and we keep the racks for bait. But those are typically exported as well, so trying
Way
to,
to encourage people to eat dogfish in this country, because I think, certainly I've had fish and chips in England, and they're dogfish, but.
I've had them as
and they're
fish and
good.
chips. They're
Isn't
great.
that what the harvesters are doing now?
Yeah, Chatham Harvesters Cooperative has made some moves there. We've done, I know
Yeah,
Doreen
for-
probably knows
for
more than
both
I do
that,
about
huh?
that, but we've had a lot of different initiatives to support both skate and dogfish, because those are really some of the top landings that we have. And if you look at, I mean, we looked at the Harwich numbers tonight, they're gonna be a significant amount, especially, well, from that particular fleet, a lot of those are gillnet boats. But skates, dogfish, monkfish, so a lot of what I've done is gill netting, so we have fish out of Harwich, like John said, we have long winter trips. It's a long winter, but we land a lot of monkfish and a lot of skate. So we're always trying to keep those more locally, and that's not with dogfish, but with skate. That's a huge part of that initiative. And one of the challenges is always, you know, when you're trying new seafood, some people tend to stick to the same types of seafood and what they're comfortable cooking, and it can be challenging to get somebody to cook something new at home or teach them how to cook it. So being able to have a value added product, I know, like you said, the Harvesters Cooperative has some different value added products with dogfish or with monkfish. We have one with skate. So I think having a value added product to sort of get a foot in the door and
You need a
expose
better
people to
name
that.
for dogfish.
But I can tell you all, I don't want to keep you all here all night, but happy to answer questions after. There are FDA regulations that do actually really limit what you can change the name to, though there are some really creative ones that I've
I'm not
heard.
blaming you for that, I'm just.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm always up for getting myself into trouble, so I'm going to start with an aside. That skate chowder base, a guy who spent roughly half of his life in New York and half of his life here, sounds suspiciously like a New York-based chowder. Yeah. But seriously, in terms of what you're doing, we have been working so hard for the longest time, talking about career opportunities for kids who grow up here and young people. And it's so heartening to hear of something that we're trying to nurture. And I totally agree with John. It's a real priority for us that, you know, concentrating on small boat fishing and making it a thriving industry is really important for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which is there's something legitimate to work in the community and stay in the community. So I applaud all the efforts.
I think one other thing which is really great to support, and we have in our town in Harwich, it's relevant since we're at the Harwich meeting, we also have a partnership with Cape Tech. So over the past year, I've expanded our program to work with the marine shop students at Tech. So if you know anybody that's interested in fishing, have them talk to me. We have gift cards to Cape Fish.
Mary?
I have great respect for your organization. Prior to Small Boats Big Taste, you had a Fish for Families program, which is still ongoing with the pantry. And one of the things we set that up to do was to promote the lesser-known species, including dogfish and skate. And I was blown away. I can't remember her name, the woman that helped me start it up. It'll come to me. She's the warden, the fish warden in Wellfleet now. Nancy. She gave me some skate and some dogfish because I said, "You really? Are people going to eat this?" You know, she said, "Honest, take it home and cook it." The skate to me tastes like scallops. The skate was fantastic. The dogfish, I'd be hard pressed to tell you whether it was dogfish or cod or haddock. It was a nice, flaky white fish. So fabulous work. I'm just so happy to hear people are fishing.
Young people too.
Great job. Great presentation and great work by the Alliance. I've spent my whole life in this business, so I know exactly what you do and love what you do. So thank you. Anyone in the public wish to say anything? Usually forget that.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask one question?
You can?
What's a gill netter?
Oh.
I recognized every other word, but I didn't understand that one.
Gillnet is a type of fixed fishing gear. So you have mobile gear, so that's gear that you drag around like a scallop dredge or dragger towing a net. Fixed gears fixed to the bottom like a lobster pots, something like that. So we have anchored sink gill nets locally. They're not the kind that drift around. So there's an anchor at one end, and there's a buoy line to a surface system similar to what you have lobstering. You have a buoy, a high flyer, little pole. There's a string of nets that are connected together. Depending on the gear you're fishing, what you're targeting, they'll stand anywhere between like 4 and 10 feet off the bottom, but it's basically like a fence off the ocean floor like that. And at the other end, it's anchored, and then there's a buoy at the surface. So when you set your gear on a specific bottom type at a specific depth to target a certain species. We target locally a lot of skate and dogfish primarily, and that's very targeted fisheries. There's not really much bycatch in that. In the winter, we target monkfish and some skates. You can target groundfish with them. We just don't really target much groundfish around here anymore. And when you haul back, you grab your end, and then it comes through a hauler. It's pretty labor-intensive fishery, so we handpick everything that comes out of the net. So every dogfish of your 7,500 pounds or every skate from your 5,000 pounds of wings, we're handpicking them. And then the nets basically spread them back out when they come in so they don't go out in a tangled mess. That's my 30-second
I
summary.
knew the
of all
other
that.
words. I knew enough to be dangerous, but I couldn't have faked that one. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Fishing questions?
No. Thank you. Thanks again. Can I get read the public hearing notice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Harwich Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority, will hold a public hearing at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, on Monday, August 8th, 2022, no earlier than 6 p.m., to consider increasing fees for various classes of liquor licenses. All interested parties are invited to attend. Signed, the Harwich Board of Selectmen as the local licensing authority, and as published in the Cape Cod Chronicle, July 21st.
Okay, the public hearing is open, and this is to change the format and prices of our liquor licenses. Anyone in the public wish to speak on this? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Board comments or a motion. Start with Mary.
We discussed this a couple of meetings ago, and I think Danielle did a nice job researching other towns, so I'm in favor of going forward. Do you want a motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
I move that we vote to implement the liquor license fee structure change as presented in the packet.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Claire? Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might note, I mean, they're reasonable, and I might note when I held the seasonal wine and malt license in Dennis in the 90s, it's the exact same price as this. I mean, we're not gouging anyone in this price schedule.
Any other comments?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. And on to the consent agenda B.
I move we approve the following Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for regular meetings: February 22nd, 2022, May 23rd, 2022, June 6th, 2022, June 13th, 2022, and June 21st, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, on the earlier item, there is an appointment letter that is circulating for board members to sign.
Thank you. Joe, do you want to open new business A?
Thank you.
Oh, those headed back.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm thrilled to be able to present for your affirmation and approval my appointment of our newest computer coordinator. I would state that with the action this evening where the town has come to agreement with SEIU, the management union, we will know that that position will be referred to in the future as the Director of Information Technology. The individual that I have selected was after a thorough and comprehensive search process. I know that there were 5 individuals that were deemed qualified for either initial review by the Assistant Town Administrator and then review by me. and that led to 4 interviews, 3 of which I conducted beyond the assistant town administrator. Ms. Eaton comes to us with a strong background in municipal information technology. She presently works and has worked for the last 15 years in the town of Orleans. I know that the IT director there, Peter Van Dyke, speaks highly of her. And she also committed to her professional craft by achieving a master's degree in communication and information management. And it was really those 2 things, her breadth and depth of municipal experience of 15 years and her academic achievement, as well as how well she did with the questions, that really separated her from the rest of the pack, so to speak. However, this was an appointment that I struggled with because there were 2 strong candidates and a 3rd candidate that would have done exceedingly well. But in the end, Ms. Eaton, I think and I know, has the best experience in academics of all of them, and I know she'll make an immediate positive impact here in the town of Harwich. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, and I certainly respectfully ask for your affirmation of this appointment.
Thank you. Questions? Start, Larry?
Yeah, Joel and I did have a discussion this afternoon. I think that it's a strong appointment. I think one of my questions to Joel was, a few weeks ago, we talked about presenting to us what the credentials for all the candidates applying for the job, and that there might be a way to do that without violating confidentiality or any legal principles. So we have some insight into more details of why you chose this person over someone else. Can you expand on some of the backgrounds of the people that applied in a way that we can feel that we're more informed?
Certainly, and I do know, and I apologize, I also want to emphasize that after the last presentation, the chair has added to your agenda the discussion later on about the process around appointments, both the affirmation and the 2-week period for other appointments. Of the 4 candidates that were considered to be strong candidates, 2 of them, one of them being Ms. Eaton, have direct municipal experience. The other candidate had less than 7 years of municipal experience in IT and did not have the similar educational background. A 3rd candidate has a strong background in information technology, not directly related to municipality, but is familiar with public operations and things of that nature. Again, Ms. Eaton exceeds that candidate in years of service and education. And the 3rd one, I think at this point would be the 4th one, had a strong background in information technology that warranted an interview but didn't have a strength of municipal government or government to back that up.
May I have a follow-up question, if I may? In your judgment, Joe, would Ms. Eaton's, is her background emphasize more hardware or software? Because I think as a board, we've been looking, I assume she's well-versed in munis and the municipal, the government, the computer side. But we've also had a lot of discussion in the past of what we can do to strengthen our, I'm generally using software to talk about how we handle web communication, social activity, all the things that we're doing a good job, but we could do better, I think, with that expertise that we didn't have in the past. So my question is, does she fill that role as well?
So she does, certainly when you talk about web-based applications and the website itself, that's her primary function for the town of Orleans. But when you talk about hardware versus software, she actually demonstrated a strong proficiency, certainly in the equipment and the hardware and other software applications. We talked about Munis. She's very well versed in that. We talked about the OpenGov platform that we're striving to move towards. She's very familiar with that. But she also had a strength in network, and that's a key area because we have exposure on our network systems as well. So beyond having the hardware, software background, beyond being well-versed in municipal websites and communications that do all that, she has a very strong background in network support. And that's going to help us over time, in my opinion, perhaps wean us off of some of the vendor contracts that are out there. And that was another thing that really separated her from the pack.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to preface this by saying two things. First of all, Sarah on paper looks great. She sounds great. I'm sure she's going to do a terrific job. Secondly, I'm going to say the charter is the charter we got. I don't care what you think that it needs to be, but it is the charter we have. And I still use the word confirmation rather than affirmation because it requires 3 selectmen to agree to the appointment. The other broad comment I'm going to make is that over the last 5 years, I have rarely gone directly to see a department head, and I know that I've told the town administrator when that has occurred. And I have rarely voted against anybody. But to me, this is a kind of cynical move. I mean, the town administrator is sitting here because he was hired with the process, understanding who the final candidates were. He was not the final selected candidate initially, but we made the choice because we had the information to make that choice with. There is not, up until today, in our packet, we received a copy of the offer letter and nothing else. And I'm not prepared to vote on that basis on this. That's why I brought up originally. This is not about Sarah. She sounds terrific. But as a matter of process, the town administrator promised us at the last time I made these comments that there would be some attempt to be made to reach out to us to let us know some of the information that I just brought up. No such attempt was made. And the packet, like I said, had a piece of paper in it, which was the offer letter. Tonight, you've made some other comments, but I mean, it's too little too late. I mean, but again, the metaphoric barn door got closed, and now you want nobody else to go through it. I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of changing the charter either, because we don't have a town manager. And the only way the public has any input on anything as to senior management, that's why I brought up, I don't go directly to the town department heads, especially without letting the town administrator know that that's happening, because that would be contrary to the charter. But the only mechanism that the townspeople have to assure themselves that this isn't just a bureaucratic setup is that the selectmen are involved and they assume that we have more information than they do, which we don't.
Mary?
Well, that's a bigger hornet's nest than I was expecting. Sarah sounds very capable to me, so I don't have an issue with it, but it sounds like we maybe have a process issue we need to talk about.
Well, and I would say that I have a lot to say, but I'll wait until the conversation on a potential charter change, which if that's not made, then we'll go back to the conversation we had 2 weeks ago, which were board members were going to give feedback on how that they would receive that. We never agreed that we were going to just have a process. We agreed we would have another conversation, which is why it's on the agenda tonight. Joe spoke last time very eloquently about confidentiality and people not wanting to be named in public out of fear of losing the job that they currently have if they're not a finalist. So we did agree to have another conversation about this, and it's on the agenda. We also agreed to provide feedback, which I haven't received any yet, and I'm not sure if the town administrator has not. And then lastly, on town administrator sitting here, because of the process, that's not true. He's sitting here because a simple Google search of the finalist showed that he was not acceptable to the town of Harwich, and we decided to move on. We did not review everybody's application. Don happened to know Joe at the time, and that was definitely somebody that he wanted to put in that place. So I respectfully disagree with you, Don, on what the process was or has been, and the charter change obviously will be voted on by town meeting if we get to that point. But I'm comfortable with the person that we hired to run the town, running the town, and us not getting in the way of his hires, as we would expect him not to get in the way of our hires. So I'm all for his appointment tonight. If you'd like to say anything, otherwise I'm going to go to a vote.
I would if I could. First, and I hope and expect that the vote is related to Ms. Ms. Eaton as Director of Information Technology. I wouldn't deign to get in the middle of a board discussion on process, but I would be remiss if I didn't indicate that I researched every one of the board's policies. The board has 2 policies on hiring. The first policy was established in 1988 and does not address this process. The second one was adopted in 1999 and does not address this process. I appreciate the members that made reference to my comments before, because whatever the board may think, I am very comfortable and confident in knowing that my actions are meant to ensure that the town is protected from liability. And unless and until the board has a discussion, whether it emanates from the charter item, which was put on by the chair, not by me, I view that to be a board discussion about your governing doc, but it would be helpful then from this conversation and the difficulties that we're feeling right now, that perhaps the board may establish a process or a policy. Because at present, you have none, and at present, the charter requires the town administrator to be the chief personnel administrator. And I've operated as such, and I certainly appreciate your discussion tonight, and I really do hope you affirm the process that could bring Ms. Eaton to us and not have her subject to a policy dispute.
Go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to make the same comment. I understand both Larry and Don's concerns, but I would hope that we can confirm Ms. Eaton, who sounds eminently qualified, in a position we desperately need filled, and have the policy discussion separate from that.
Thank you. Is that going to transform into a motion?
I'd be happy
Yeah,
to.
I'll just comment on that, Michael. I think timing is of an essence. I know my first thought was to postpone until we got some more information, but I don't think we can wait. Joe, respectfully, I do disagree with you on my quick reading of the charter, and I'm not an expert on the charter, but it does seem like that there's a confirmation versus affirmation says we can play a role in the hiring of division and department heads, straight away, that process is spoken to in the charter, as the other staff members that we can not confirm, but we can affirm if we disagree with you basically in 14 days. So I don't quite, I want to go ahead and move because I think timing's critical, but I do disagree with you on your reading of the policy versus, because the charter in essence is a policy, it would be my understanding.
May I respond? Thank you. First of all, what I'm trying to get to is that we have the simple statement that's in the charter that has been around since its adoption, and you have policies on hiring. But prior to last week, there has been no substantive discussion, and last meeting, and those discussions were not relative to a topic. What I'm asking for is the board to formalize how you view your role relative to that section under the chapter that deals with the town administrator, that you folks can give better guidance. What I'm suggesting tonight is that what I have operated as is consistent with every and all appointment I've ever made as interim or acting or present town administrator, and I appreciate the board's desire to perhaps formalize it. That's a board action is what I'm trying to say, meaning I do not view my presentation tonight as running contrary to the charter. If the board feels otherwise, I apologize for that. I will certainly work towards that in the future. But what I'm suggesting is it's the board's position first to develop how you want that process to be. The last time you had an appointment, I talked about the fact that I am responsible for honoring and matching the labor laws. And the labor laws are very clear about names that are made public and information that's made public. And so to avoid that conflict, I have presented the finalist that I've determined, which is not based on the charter, that's based on state labor law. So for me, there's only one finalist. If the board confirms or affirms or denies, I have no issue with that. But I do take umbrage with the fact that I have not operated differently, and I am urging the board to take it up at a board level at a future meeting, not have it related to Ms. Eaton, because I would hate for that employee to try or to feel that she got caught up in the buzzsaw of government. But it is a fair statement, and I will argue it until I'm blue in the face, that the Board of Selectmen does not have a policy that dictates hiring other than the two policies that I've mentioned. So I would urge the board to have that discussion to inform me going forward. Unless and until that, I have comments of two individual members of the board that do not constitute an action or a policy of the board. So I don't mean to suggest that I'm reading the charter better or different, but I'm urging you folks to give me some directive and do it formally, as you've done with other policies. And I think that can alleviate a lot of the discontent. I'm certainly optimistic that it could.
We'll go to Don, and then hopefully to a motion. It's hot in here, it's already 7 o'clock.
I'm not driven by time. Mary's convinced me to not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But in having said that, practice is as important as policy. I've been on this damn board for 11 years. And for 11 years, we had always, even in the last iteration with Chris here, we had gotten to the point as a matter of practice that we did get the other candidates. And I am unaware, because it's somewhat insulting, I am unaware of anybody on this board ever serving who divulged any confidential information that they got relative to any of those hires. So where I came from, they had a saying, is you don't fix what ain't broke. There hasn't been a problem. We were elected precisely to be the representatives of the people out there in the community. If we can't get to know what's going on, who? And this is the last time I'm going to vote on a selection like this, because it was a practice. It was only just recently it reverted back to we don't get to know. I have been on the selection committee for the county administrator. I've done a myriad of things, and there have been almost a dozen of these confirmations that have occurred since I came back to the board 5 years ago. Nobody's ever divulged anything. Nobody goes around town saying, you know who the other person was they passed over? That has not happened. We're adults, and we were hired by the public to get information so that the public doesn't wind up getting mired in labor law problems. I am unaware that this has been a problem Cape-wide or statewide, because other communities don't handle this way.
Okay, a motion?
Michael, yeah, I can go ahead and move.
Thank you.
Move that we appoint Sarah Eaton as computer coordinator.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm going to step away from this topic, as I may be informed to be a hearing officer.
Okay.
And I'll return shortly.
So, new business B, vote to authorize the town administrator to hold a show cause hearing and to be the hearing officer for the following licensed establishment: Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28. Alleged violations occurring June 15th, 2022, July 1st, 2022, July 2nd, 2022, July 4th, 2022, July 5th, 2022, and July 6th, 2022. The Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28, alleged violations occurring on July 2nd, 2022, and July 4th, 2022. In the packet, there's a memo from the police chief, or a couple of memos outlining, as well as police reports. So our job tonight simply is to decide, based on the police reports and the recommendation, whether or not we want to have a show cause hearing and have the town administrator be the hearing officer. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to presume that at least I can put a motion out there, and then we can discuss whether we do or don't want to.
If you hold off, Don, just the recommendation from the police chief was only for 4 of the violations out of the 6 that are on here. So both restaurants are on here, 1 for 2, 1 for
Then by all means, have the chief.
6 dates. So
Can you read those dates to me? I read them this afternoon. I know half of them were not.
So the
recommended.
dates that Chief is recommending, for the joint instance that happened out in front of both restaurants, which was related to crowd, was on July 2nd, 2022. I just want to make sure I get this correct. Yep, July 2nd. The one on July 4th for both restaurants, the chief did not recommend that we go forward with that. And the one on July 1st, 2022 for the port, He did not recommend we go forward with a show cause hearing, and he did speak to council to make those recommendations. So the chief's recommendation, based on what council had said, was for Port Restaurant Bar would be alleged violation occurring on June 15th, 2022, July 2nd, 2022, July 5th, 2022, and July 6th, 2022. The 5th and the 6th are related to entertainment license violations, and it's alleged that the restrictions that we put on the license for acoustic, unamplified music was broken, and that there was music being played with amplification. The Lucky Labrador, Inc. shares the date of July 2nd, 2022, and that would be Perks for those that don't know. And that was related to crowd. And that was related to a double line that formed on the sidewalk that was kind of forcing people off the sidewalk into the street, allegedly. And at least in my reading of that, one establishment was out there helping and trying to control it, and one was unaware that they were responsible, or at least management for one was unaware that they were responsible for what was going on outside. So that's my take on reading the memo, is that we're only being asked really for four dates for one. I want to make sure I do the math right. 4 dates for one, and one for the other one, which would be related to crowd. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to back up a second, because we had a problem in the last iteration of hearings. And I just want to make sure we're not going down that same road again. To the extent that there were witnesses other than the police officer who are willing to come in and say, I personally saw so-and-so and such, I would like that to be part of the hearing process, and it seemed like our lawyer said that that was an appropriate possibility. So in terms of the conduct of the hearing, my expectation is we make a motion to hold that hearing. Anybody who has personal knowledge of those situations would be invited to come and offer testimony.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. The only, and I just want to reiterate, because I know we have somebody here from one establishment and possibly an attorney for the other one online. Our only job tonight is to decide whether or not we're going to have a hearing. It's not to have the hearing.
Right.
And it's based on the chief of police speaking to council and whether or not it falls under our liquor regulations, and whether or not they believe that there was an alleged violation. So I will allow brief comment, but we are not going to get into the weeds tonight on any of the actual details. Not happening. I'll call you as soon as I'm ready. I would say on the, I'm just going to give my personal feeling on the crowd one. And I know it was a big crowd. I was down in Harwich Board that night. I know that we had lines of people down the sidewalk, but I was also in Chatham, and Chatham had the same lines. I would imagine Hyannis had the same lines. July 4th weekend on Cape Cod was crazy, and there was a lot of people here. And I know that once the police made contact with the establishments, after they figured out with management on the other one, then they got some help from that, and the lines were moved so that they weren't blocking. So contact happened, they moved the line, they controlled it, and for me, it's a stretch to have a hearing on that one. But that's my own feelings, my own reading.
That's the July 2nd one.
That's the July 2nd one that is for both Perk and Port.
And I would agree with that. You know, July 4th is busy. We haven't reached perfection yet, so I think we can, maybe next year, but I think right now we should count our blessings that nothing actually went terribly wrong that time, you know, with all the stuff going on that weekend. And the police did an incredible job of, well, don't overpraise the police, chief, but handling the beach crowds and all the traffic in Harwich Port is it's good.
Mary?
I'm going to be the meanie here. I thought the chief did a pretty nice job in his report analyzing the situation and talking to council. So I'm in favor of going with his recommendation and including that one.
Okay.
But if I'm in the minority, so be it.
Don, comments?
Having held a store here for 10 years, I know what Michael's saying. There's some 4th of July weekends are just insane. I'm more worried at that point about people taking cups outside and bringing the entertainment out to the roadway as opposed to the spillover, if you'll excuse the pun, because it's really hard to be able to govern, people who are trying to get in. As a matter of fact, the other part of this that we haven't discussed, I think Mary had brought it up in the past about Uber lanes. We got to have that discussion too, because it's chaotic. I mean, and we can't have a state highway sitting right in front of all these buildings with overflow going in and overflow coming out, because it's not safe. And that's on us, because we have no process to be able, I mean, you can't go to the airport here and get an Uber to pick you up at the arrivals area, because the Port Authority has determined that they're only going to put them in a certain spot. We haven't done anything towards that goal. So shame on us. I'm on the fence about the July 2nd ones, though, because, I mean, aside from worrying about the inside part, I can imagine the outside part. The inside was probably a zoo in both places because everybody had decided COVID was over and let's go party. I mean, there are other things that were violations that I'm all in for, or potential violations there. I'm all in on making sure that at least are investigated. But my concern is if we do this, even if we decide that, it was overwhelming and it really wasn't a big deal, and so we're just going to tell you we're slapping you on the wrist, that constitutes a second violation or first, second, or third violation on a license. And we can't go back again and just say, well, it was really not as bad as some of the other things that occurred on the license. It's a second strike for some people, and it'll count as much as an egregious problem because it's still a problem that's a check mark off of your license.
Go ahead, Mary.
I feel last year, some of these same establishments got a huge skate on things that clearly were violations that we couldn't prove. So I'm less inclined to be easy.
Hi, Taylor Powell, owner of Perks with my wife, Sarah Powell, sitting next to me. I was a witness, so I can attest to some of the questions you had, Don. I was there. I'm there every night, really. I closed the place down. I just kind of wanted to go over, because in those liquor license regulations, one of those is you ask for help if you need it, which we did. So 4th of July, there was a line at every place on the South Shore, from Chatham all the way to Chapin's, all the way up to the Bayside. It's just a crazy weekend. We did our best to control the line. We were there addressing people on the sidewalk. I have two ex-military security guards at the door, making sure no drinks ever leave. We have signs that say as such, people cannot walk out with alcohol. I saw some of the officers here tonight when we swore in the other officer, the new officer, and they were here. My wife and I walked up to all three officers. Hey, we see that there's a big line. What would you like us to do? Let's improve. Let's work on it. They said, I think you're doing a good job. I said, can you help us? Is there anything more we can do? No, it's just a crazy weekend. Keep up what you're doing and try to just maintain it and keep the people on the sidewalk. And that's what we did. So we asked for help. I don't think this justifies a hearing for us because it's just a waste of resources. It's a waste of everyone's time, money. We're going to have to hire a lawyer. That's less money we have to feed our family. And it's pointless because we were there addressing it, working on it, and I don't think we violated our liquor license. So that's my comments on that July 2nd issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wish to speak? Anyone online wish to speak? Okay, so if we could do a motion,
What would
and
be the
Mary,
deal
just
on
so,
the Lucky Labrador of July 4th?
July 4th was one that was not brought forward with a recommendation.
That's what I didn't circle it, okay.
So if we could just do a motion that would be, the first one would be Port Restaurant Bar, Inc. for alleged violations occurring June 15th, July 5th, and July 6th. If we could do that as one motion,
That's the one I was going to make.
and then we can do a second motion for the July 2nd if a board member wants to make a
Okay.
motion, and that would be a motion for both businesses.
All right, then let's start with the first one. I move to authorize the town administrator to hold a showcase hearing and be the hearing officer for the following licensed establishment. The Port Restaurant at 541 Route 28 for alleged violations occurring on June 15th, July 5th, and July 6th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Who made the second on that?
I did.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, now we're on to, which would be a joint hearing, and that would be for the alleged violation and it related to crowd and the line for July 2nd. And that would be both establishments if somebody wanted to make a motion on that.
Okay, I move that we vote to authorize the town administrator to hold show cause hearings and to be the hearing officer for the following licensed establishments. Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28, alleged violations occurring on July 2nd, 2022. And the Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28, alleged violations occurring on July 2nd, 2022.
Okay? Any second on that?
No.
I can't.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, so motion does not go forward, no second. Okay.
But forewarned is forearmed. 'Cause we have other things coming up, like Labor Day.
Joe,
Do we have July 4th?
for the record, Don made a motion, Larry seconded it, and it was to have a show cause hearing for the Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28, and to have you hold the show cause hearing and be the hearing officer for the alleged violations on June 15, 2022, July 5th, 2022, and July 6th, 2022. 3 dates. That was made as one motion, and that was a 4-0 vote. Mary made a motion to hold a show cause hearing for Lucky Labrador, Inc., DBA Perks, 545 Route 28, and Port Restaurant and Bar, Inc., 541 Route 28, to hold a show cause hearing and for you to be the hearing officer. And that did not get a second, so there was no votes taken.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, on item B1, the alleged violations are June 15th, July 5th, July 6th, not the other dates listed, and if that's correct, I will just state on the record right now that I have not read any of the materials related to either of the establishments, so I will make sure that when staff presents it, it's only relative to those dates in question.
Thank you, Joe. Don?
And through you, Mr. Chair, as a town administrator, we did reiterate that in looking at the last process and the last hearings, that we are encouraging anybody who has firsthand knowledge of any of the incidents that they would be invited to be giving testimony at these hearings.
Thank you.
And then, Joe, just one of the other complaints, for lack of a better word, was the time it took to have a hearing. So hopefully we could do this fairly expedited.
We have a system in place now, I think, that can get that done based on the schedules of all the relevant parties.
Thank you. Mary, will you open C? I'm going to recuse myself from this one.
Okay, can I have a motion on C, please?
Sure. I vote to approve the following one-day spatial permit request for Representative 4 Cross Street event on September 5, 2022 from 4 to 8 p.m. outside. One-day entertainment, live recorded music with amplification. And second part of that is one-day wines and malt liquor license.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, discussion, Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anybody have any more information relative to this? The only reason I'm even bringing this up is we're getting, I think everybody recalls, we're getting more one-day requests that boil down to entertainment and alcohol. And my suspicion is that some of these are starting to become cottage industries where Airbnb is facilitating pop-up receptions in residential neighborhoods. It concerns me because I've been on record as saying, hey, if your kid graduates from high school, I don't want you having to come in here to get a license to have some music and have some friends over. Anybody have any insight about what this is really?
This is a little store on Cross Street. It's
Okay.
like a craft store. So I don't know.
That's
it
fine then.
doesn't say what the occasion is, but it's an event
answers
that they
your
had
question.
last year.
That
It's
answers
just
it. That's fine.
Okay.
It's not in a residential neighborhood.
No, well, it's
It is,
a
yeah.
commercial building.
Yeah,
It's
that's fine.
downtown. Any
I'm
other
good.
discussion? We took a vote and second, correct? So
We
now,
took a, made a motion,
seconded
we have
it.
a
motion and
second.
second. Now we
I
need a
made the
vote.
motion, now we need to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
3-1?
No,
Joe?
3-0,
3-0.
3-0,
sorry,
thank you.
3-0.
unless you're voting for Michael.
No.
You can vote for him anytime.
Yeah, we'll let him know.
Okay, you're up to D.
All right, D. Can I get a motion?
I move to vote approval of a new 2022 weekday and Sunday trampoline license, Chi Chi Jumps LLC at 296 Route 28, weekdays and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Is pending building department sign off.
I'll second that, Rick, but I do have a question.
Okay, moved and seconded, discussion done.
Who would be the sign-off? Because we're once again absent a commissioner here.
No, we've always had a commissioner. We have Tom Wingard, who is a retired commissioner that has helped the town. He remains under contract. He assisted Rob Picciarelli when he was here. And I have further information from Mr. Wingard, and I apologize, I believe I'm saying his name right, regarding the building department's input. I do know that the applicant is with you this evening, so I don't know if the board wants to hear information or how you want to proceed.
Seems very straightforward. Seems like we're approving a permit.
To me, it doesn't, half the summer's over, so I'm kind of concerned that we do something about it.
What do you
Well,
mean?
yeah,
We still need the building department to sign off on it.
And
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, my concern, staff-wise, is that the building department may not be in a position to approve. There is an ongoing issue between the applicant and the building department relative to the type of use. I could explain more, but you're presently under a motion.
Well, we're in discussion, so I'm gonna let you explain more. But I'm not sure how we can approve this without the building department or building commissioner signing off and checking the boxes.
And at present, he's indicated that it's problematic for him to sign off. The application indicates trampoline, and my understanding from staff is that there's a trampoline element to the device, but it is also considered by the building department, based on the investigation and review of the specifications of the equipment, that it is also a bungee jump device, based on the harnesses. Trampolines do not require a state permit, but bungee jumps do, and that's what staff is struggling with presently.
Well, this is a conundrum.
yeah. Because I expected, usually we see these as the building, we expect the building department is just momentarily behind.
Call me never mind, go ahead. Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm in some sort of Russian novel here. My kids all went to the trampolines, including Destiny, who we're going around the track with a second time here. And I viewed the bungee aspect of this as being more like a safety problem because we were always sitting there watching them getting closer and closer and closer to the spring edge saying, gosh, I wish there was some way we could make sure that they don't wind up having a real problem getting their legs down there. So I am not sure that the primary thrust of this is a bungee jump in the way that the state looks at a bungee jump, which is you're going off of a surface and The bungee cord extends. I mean, I look at this more as an adjunct to, as a safety device to the trampoline itself. They're not jumping off a ledge somewhere.
I think we're trying to convince Joe, and he's not who we have to convince. And
I'm willing to withdraw my motion because I'm not sure we can move ahead at this point.
Mary?
This isn't a new business. Is this a new owner?
No, it's a new device at the trampolines
Oh, it's a
and
new
ice cream
device.
shop in
Okay.
Harwich Board. So it's
All
an
right.
addition to.
So if we took the bungee off, everybody'd be happy.
Well, I put my 3-year-old grandson in the bungee thing at the Barnstable County Fair, and he did awesome. He's 31 pounds, and he had to be 30 to get on it. So I know what we're talking about here, but I'm not sure that it's not above
But
my
my
pay
problem
grade to
is
make this
that-
decision.
Yeah, we need the building inspector, to make the decision at this point.
What, in February?
Joe? Lifeline.
Well, I think I'm the one that's in need of the lifeline. The way I would clearly state it is, the applicant asked to come before the board, staff put it on, it's pending building, the applicant's here, the board is here. But staff, through the town administrator, is telling you that there are concerns relative to the device, and upon inspection by the town agents, they do not consider it to be merely a trampoline. And I believe the phrase was conundrum, and I believe that is a proper phrase.
So we approve it tonight, nothing happens until the building commissioner signs off on it anyway.
Correct, but I didn't want the board to work under the false understanding that that may be imminent. My understanding from talking to staff is that that ruling is not imminent and that the question needs to be resolved.
Applicant?
Before that?
Go ahead, Don. and
Our
then-
own application doesn't even have a slot to check off for bungee. I'm just pointing that out.
Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I'm Michael Doucette. Been a part of the trampoline family for the last 20-plus years. And as you probably all know, the trampolines have been around since 1961. It's a staple for many families to come to Cape Cod and jump on the trampolines. And the demographic has definitely shifted. So what we see now is the 30-pound 3 to 5-year-old child jumping on the regular trampolines. So we've proposed to add a bungee trampoline, which you're just secured to a bungee that then you jump on a trampoline. And so you're not going anywhere, you're not moving anywhere. The device is a mobile device, so I'm not really sure why building has to be involved. There's no permanent structures anywhere. It's just an additional recreational device that's down there to attract a older demographic, like what we see over at the go-karts, as well as the zip lines and the other things just down the street. So we're just looking to attract a little bit of an older crowd as well through the bungee trampoline device. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can regarding what the bungee trampoline actually is.
Do you already have this?
We do.
Larry, would you withdraw your motion?
Sure. If I'm not sure, let me,
I mean, we can get more into the weeds on this, but the motion's not, we can't do that anyway, so. But I think we need to get rid of the motion in a second.
well, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And then the intent is to bring it back then, or to,
Second withdrawn? Anyone can make another motion if they want. I guess that's.
I don't remember actually making a second.
I don't know whether I made it or not, but if I did, I'll withdraw it.
All
How's
three,
that?
you remove your seconds?
Yeah, because I don't remember either. I don't think they got as far as the second.
Joe, are we breaking any laws by not doing this? He didn't quote law, did he?
Who's he and do what?
Building commissioner.
So the building commissioner has indicated, well, let me back up and say, it's helpful for the town to hear Mr. Doucette refer to the device as a bungee trampoline. The use of the word bungee, offered by Mr. Doucette himself, is what requires the building commissioner to look at it from that angle. The state regulations are very clear that any device that incorporates bungee requires a state permit, first and foremost, and then building would have to do their evaluation. I don't want to suggest that if Mr. Doucette obtains his state license, that it's a slam dunk here at the town, but the word bungee is what's following this all up.
Can I ask you two questions?
Go ahead.
How many of these trampolines have this?
There's one in Hanover.
No. How many are yours?
So there's 12 trampolines currently at the original trampoline center. This is a separate and distinct entity, and it's 4 trampolines, 10 foot with the attached bungee.
And you're currently operating the others under
Correct.
permit?
This is totally separate.
Okay, so you can't open the other one without, the combination one without a permit from the town?
No, we're held up from that.
My only comment is going to still be, I mean, I know it's Starkey, but I was like, when did they take the town of Harwich out of, the town word out of the town of Harwich? I feel like we're becoming a city. I mean, this is becoming kind of absurd about some of the safety regulations. In this case, this actually enhances the safety of somebody smaller, not detracts from their safety.
It sounds like it's a state thing, not a
Yeah.
town thing, right, Joe?
Correct. To start with, it's state regulation. The phrase that was used, bungee device, is what's referenced in the state regs.
And there's no further definition about you going off of a surface for the bungee.
I didn't say that. I haven't read the full CMR. I don't know that the building commissioner has yet, but we know that that applies first.
Because traditionally, I mean, regulations are promulgated under state laws, I mean, which is some bureaucrat sitting somewhere interpreting what a law said. Typically, a bungee is, you attach something to you, it's elastic, you jump from a surface and you go down and then you're pulled back up. I mean, and that's pretty much what I consider to be a bungee. In this case, it's assisting you in going down, not up. And so when the going down part is actually mitigating you jumping on the trampoline.
I think you're probably trying to apply logic to a state regulation.
Yeah, that was my problem.
I don't see how we can approve it tonight.
I don't either.
Unfortunately, I agree with you,
I think
Doc.
the
but I don't see how
the
we
state
go forward.
regulation part of it is the problem, because.
So is that what we need to obtain then, the state regulation permit? Because I know that's possible, we just don't
I think
have
if you
it.
get that, I think the consensus of this board is, we think it's a good idea.
Okay, cool.
And I know exactly what it is, we were on it
So
2 weeks ago.
We've already punted for this. This has been too many setbacks, pushbacks. Obviously, when you make investments like this, it's unfortunate to not be able to move forward. But now we know what we need for next season. I'm going to get everything we need now, hopefully come before you again within the next, 30 to 60 days, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward once we get that state.
Well, I would be willing to bet you, if you could get the state permit, that we would hold a special meeting via Zoom or whatever platform we're using now and approve a license for you, so.
I will get on
If
that.
you could get it done quickly, and it's before the 2-week mark, which is our next meeting, then I would ask the board members to convene on Zoom and vote that.
Amen.
Yep.
Thank you all very much.
I have one, if I may. Joel, is there anything we need to do to help support, gain the state reaction to this?
I don't believe so. I think according to Tom, what I'm not comprehending is the acronym they used of IAW, which, if I understand correctly, is the Industrial Accidents and Workers Board. That's who is responsible for the bungee. I believe Mr. Doucette was made aware by staff of this requirement for state. I would just advise the board that if Mr. Doucette gets his state application and his approval, there is still the issue of whether the site at which he wishes to operate the device is sufficient.
So that's the.
There's more, well, we can't even go to that position unless and until there's state approval. And then the town would have, through staff, would have to reevaluate.
So even
It
though
has to
this
be
was
linear.
all approved by planning board, all that good stuff, that's irrelevant here?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the applicant?
Yes.
I don't believe that that's an accurate statement, that everything was approved by the planning board. And further, no, if you are required to get a state permit, you must get a state permit.
But once he gets a state permit, and that's, I guess.
Once he gets a state permit, he should inform staff that he has the state permit. The building commissioner then knows that he has the permit for the bungee device, and then would analyze the application under the building codes and all that he applies to it, and says whether or not that use is appropriate at the proposed location.
Any way to get there before he goes through this? We're trying to help a business. Is there any way to request that the building commissioner weighs in now on the site so that he's not chasing himself around to try and get
I
something
think
done?
that's a fair question that I can ask staff.
Okay.
Yep.
But that, to me, makes a lot more sense than in reverse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Russian novel.
I'm sorry?
Russian novel, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Joe.
Man,
Motion on E.
we're still meeting, aren't we? I move that we approve and sign the state primary election warrant to be held on September 6, 2022. It's a little syntax problem here, but the primary will be held on September 6th, and I move that we sign the primary election warrant.
And those are the warrants.
Do we get a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to sign the primary warrants.
There are two elections that are being held at the same time because one is the Republican and one is the Democrat, which is why there are warrants.
Yes, thank you, Don. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Motion on F.
Moved that we delegate authority to the police chief to designate a minimum number of police officers to the polling locations and to assign police officers to work the polls.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
In making that motion, I'm just curious what changed, because we have our town clerk sitting here now, and the town clerk had always actually designated how many police officers he or she felt were necessary to conduct a satisfactory election.
Thank you, Don. Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. It's actually a state legislative change as part of the Votes Act, which recently passed the state legislature. They required that boards of selectmen or equivalent chief executive bodies be the one to assign a minimum number of officers and even to assign the officers themselves. So I'm basically just asking you to delegate that authority back to the police department in conjunction with the town clerk.
Can I modify my motion then to say that we delegate the authority to the chief to designate the number of police officers in concert with the town clerk?
That was part of the second, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Can I get a motion on G?
I move that we approve the Democratic and Republican town committee lists of election workers for the town clerk to make selections from.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. If the board's okay with it, I'd like to take H out of order and come back to that. It's getting late in the hour, and I'm not sure that anyone else in the crowd is here to talk about the charter change.
Bring it back too, I don't care.
Well, we might do that as part of the policy discussion
that's
at the
fine.
same time. So we'll talk about it at the end of the meeting, end of the new business or old business. Okay, discussion, potential bylaw pertaining to solar panels and / solar tracker. And Mary, I'm gonna let you open this one.
Okay. This is on the agenda after the Selbys, who are here with us tonight, brought it to our attention that a large, I think it's 20 feet high, I forget how wide, a large ground-mounted solar application was going in directly across the street from them, directly across the street from Allen Harbor. And the neighbors, this is on Ship Haven Road, if some of you haven't seen it, it's the corner of Ship Haven and Lower County. It's huge, and it's pretty ugly. When the Selbys brought it to our attention, it was at, was it planning or zoning? But at any rate, there was currently nothing in the town, bylaws, charter, zoning, whatever, to prevent this from going in. It's treated as any other structure in terms of it just had to meet the setbacks. So we were stuck with it. But both the Selbys and I credit them, this is already in their neighborhood, but they don't want to let it go, and I don't either. I'd like to look at placing some type of limitation on where these walls, solar wall, for lack of a better description, can go. I don't live near the water, but I wouldn't want to stare at one across the street from me. And I have solar panels on my roof, but I think this is different. It's a large structure. It follows the sun, so it rotates, it makes noise, and I'd just like to pursue it. I found out also from the Selbys that there was a problem with a similar application in Beverly, Mass. And if you Google Beverly, Mass solar monster, you can get the the gist of the story. They have subsequently created an ordinance, I think the woman called it, and I talked to her today. Their ordinance, and I tried to read it, but I couldn't quite follow. It was several pages. They are now they think they went too far, and they're now trying to change the ordinance to soften it a little bit. So I would just like, and you're gonna have to help me here, Joe, I don't know whether it's planning or zoning, but somebody to look at this and see if we couldn't have some type of limitations on these devices.
Joe?
Thank you. First, I want to explain my memorandum, which talks about my search that I did. We were aware of the city of Beverly. The reason why I didn't use that information in the memo is ordinances do not involve the Attorney General's review. So whatever a city does, it's completely different than what a town would do for town meeting. But I did rely upon our vendor, which is called eCode 360, which allows us to look for bylaws, not only in the Commonwealth, but any of their customer base across the country. And so similar sized towns yielded nothing. And then I used the phrase solar tracker, and that didn't yield anything in Massachusetts either. However, knowing the type of device we're talking about, knowing that tracker means following the sun, what I would recommend is that you direct me to work with council first to see if there's existing language that could then be remanded to the planning board as a zoning bylaw by you, the board. And we would do that with an eye towards the annual town meeting.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Joe. Don?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing this up, Mary. I would also point out that just because there's nothing there now, we went through this with cellular tower devices when they first started. We went through this and those were a public utility. These aren't. We went through it with individual wind turbines where people just wanted to plunk one in their property, even though their neighbors might have objected. There has to be a context for things. People move into a residential neighborhood thinking that they're in a residential neighborhood. So it would seem to me to be a really good idea, regardless of how many communities already have it, to at least investigate what that might look like to try to, for the common good, regulate what's going on here.
Larry?
I have nothing to add. I think I agree with you, Mary. And Don, just go ahead and look at it.
Thank you, Larry. Mr. and Mrs. Selby, do you want to talk?
Yes. Thank you. I'm John Selby. This is my wife, Marina. We've been owners of property in Harwich since 2004, and we're full-time residents now since 2019. And we live on 11 Shipshaven Road. So as it was just described by Mary, and Mary, we appreciate your help very much. We're very much in favor of this potential bylaw change or addition or whatever needs to be done, not just for ourselves, because what's up is up now, but we think it would impact. Harwich is a beautiful seaside community, and so is Cape Cod, clearly, and we like to see it stay that way. From what really is very surprising to us is not only does this home have the solar power, the rotating solar power unit, but they also have on their garage on the south side approximately 27 panels already. So what they're doing is they're getting enough sunlight to power their home. Frankly, they don't even live there full time. They're down maybe 5-6 times a year. They're down, might come down for a weekend, so they're not full-time residents here. Technically, are they or not? I don't know. I know they have 2 homes in Hingham. So, but with that being said, as Mary said, this tracker has 36 panels on it, if you can imagine that. It's at least 20 feet high. It's about as high as their second story. It rotates about 270 degrees from east to west during the course of the day. It starts at about 5:30 a.m. and it concludes sometime around sunset. So there's a huge visual impact not only to the street but to the town. And I think the impact, if this was just to happen, to continue happening, because these people are supposedly getting they're going to get credits from the solar company. I'm not sure we know that for sure, but we've talked to other people that have solar panels that have excess solar power energy available from the sun, and they're able to sell that. So is this there now? And there was no real, what's the word for the shrubs?
Oh,
There was some mitigation involved along the front of their house. They grew some, what kind of shrubs? A privet hedge that is deciduous privet hedge. So it's maybe about 6 feet tall now. So is it obscuring any of our vision? Not at all. Everybody can still see it. And a privet hedge is yeah, I'm not a pro at how high they go, but I know we have a privet hedge between our properties, and one of my neighbors is here as well. It's probably 20 feet tall. They grow tall. But when will that be, in 10 years? So, we think it's very important that you guys proceed with some kind of a bylaw that could benefit the whole town, not just us.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Mary will be in touch with you as Joe comes back with his findings.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
How are you? My name is Jim Denty, 7 Chip Havens Road. Been here a year. Love this town, love the people, having a great time.
Well,
Walking down the street last year, somebody's alarm's going off. Like a good neighbor, I hope we would all do. I'm like, who lives there? Never seen the people. So actually I was down here looking at the solar panel, trying to understand what's going on with the project that I heard, kind of a grassroots effort here. Nobody has to call me to tell me that they're putting up a structure. If they put an addition on their home, would they have to tell me? How come they don't have to do that if they put up a industrial complex called a solar panel? Oh, and by the way, when you look at a solar panel, everybody thinks of the front of the solar panel. Half the day, I live across the street. This thing's right across from my front door. You look at the inside of an industrial warehouse roof. You see the back of it. People don't think of that. Think of that. It's ugly. It's very unsightly. It's huge. It's huge. It's the size of that wall, just in width. Now take that and say, 24 feet high. It's obnoxious, and this thing just rotates all day long. So I called them up, got the gentleman on the phone. I said, hey, you're just trying to be a good neighbor. Your alarm's going off inside the house. I don't know if you got a water pipe. Somebody broke in. If you want me to do something, I'm happy to help. No, I got it. So, okay, thank you for calling. Oh, one other thing, if I could. I just want to ask you about the solar panels. Oh, I knew why you called. Now I know why you're calling. I'm like, that's not fair. To assume that's why I would call. Your alarm is going off, right? I just thought we could have a gentlemanly conversation, neighborly conversation. And he went on to tell me how he's donating this to charity and to the local, to the church. I don't know which church. He's donating it to the church. But, I mean, like John was saying, there's a lot of power there. Do we have to allow that sort of monstrosity and structure in a residential neighborhood? It's as big as any tree, and it's unsightly. So I come out and I say, I look at this thing. I'm going to look at this thing every day. And he goes, no, you go out in the backyard. You hang out in the backyard by the river. I'm like, now you're telling me where I live? Right? I got chairs in the front of my house looking out to the front of my house. I'm neighborly. I like to say hi to my neighbors, right? Now I got to look at this thing. So what I find is my neighbors are staring that way instead of looking at me. Maybe they don't know me yet. Anyhow, I wanted to make everybody aware of that. I think it's something that needs consideration, further consideration. And honestly, I would think considering the tax and the real estate value ramifications, there should be some level of, benefit to the neighboring residents to have to put up with this thing. If he's going to sell that to the power country, to the grid, and donate that elsewhere, think about it. He should probably have to donate to others around his neighborhood, right, because of what he's done to their property. Thank you for listening.
You're very welcome. Don?
Just one quick addendum, because everybody needs to know this leaving the room. Zoning does not pertain to who lives there. It pertains to the property. So that no matter who owns a property, they're abiding by the same sets of rules. So it doesn't matter whether it's a part-time resident or a full-time resident. It's zoning.
Joe? Clear?
Not really, meaning, is it the board's intent to direct me to work with council to draft the early stages of a bylaw to then send to planning?
Yes.
Yes.
Could that be reduced to a vote?
I move that the board refer to Mr. Powers to speak to our lawyer to reduce a zoning bylaw, the solar
Ground
Solar
mounted
tracker.
solar tracker.
devices, and to refer it back to us for potential action by the planning board.
Second?
Yep, second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the only purpose for that is because you're contemplating a zoning bylaw, the Attorney General would want to know the first instance when the topic came up. So this allows us to mark the time. Future hearings will also have to be tracked, and all of that gets sent to the Attorney General when they consider their approval process.
Thank you.
So I appreciate your patience on that.
I got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. All right, discussion bylaw, potential bylaw prohibiting garbage cans on street no longer than 24 hours. Lou? This was a resident request, and I put it on the agenda because I was asked.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Lou Urbano. Excuse me. I live in West Harwich on Riverside Drive. Over the last year or so, I've noticed an issue arising on Riverside, and that's garbage cans being left out permanently. And Riverside is becoming a main area of traffic. It's a beautiful place to go to the fish house. A lot of people walk it. And there's nothing that prevents any neighbor from leaving them out. So if you go to a neighbor and you say, you know, is there any way you could put those in the back? No, I like them where they are. And that's as far as you can go. It's not just a Riverside problem. As we drive around, we start to see it here and there. And it doesn't really, it's not a major thing. The only way you can look at this is, would you allow any resident in town to leave their garbage cans out in the street? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Is there anyone that would say yes to that? I don't think so. So it's an issue that's starting to arise. And the good thing about it, if we have an ordinance that says, look, you've got to put them away within 24 hours or whatever. That 24 hours is not a magical figure, but they can't be left on forever. It kind of gives us all a better neighborhood first. The ordinance doesn't impact those that already do it. I mean, I go to the dump, so it doesn't impact me at all. I meet all kinds of great people there, by the way. It impacts only the neighbors. And we just heard a gentleman talk about solar and how it had impacted his house. Well, garbage cans tend to also impact the persons living across and on both sides, and also residents we don't talk about, those raccoons. They love street garbage, and street garbage blows. So there's health issues, and I think whoever put this in the agenda did a good job explaining that. So I urge everyone to please, it doesn't have to be onerous, but just to give the neighbors something that they can stand there and say, well, you know, there's an ordinance that says that, put them in the back. So I really appreciate this being brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll see in the packet my cover memo, as it was with Solar Tracker, so-called, searched on garbage and garbage cans, and again, in Massachusetts with similar-sized towns. The only thing I found that was relevant is the town of Hull, and I incorrectly stated that it was a bylaw. The town of Hull incorporates within their code their health regulations. So what you see in the packet for the town of Hull is their health regulation. Beyond that, what you see in the packet is a memorandum from our health director referring back to that state code, which manages the process of storage of garbage and rubbish. And as you'll see from Dr. O'Neill, she's indicated that if the board is inclined to consider a bylaw, we do imagine that this would be general bylaw rather than zoning, that she'd be more than happy if the board referred that to the Board of Health for them to work on and then get back to the board for future consideration.
Thank you, Joe. Mary?
Yeah, I would think we'd want to pursue that.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have the chair of the Board of Health right here. I would be in on where they are, but I'm not so in on what they are, because in looking at this thing, the containers that are given to you by pretty much every single commercial company that does container pickup wouldn't match this. Those lids fly open. They don't get bungeed down. They're not rodent-proof once they get knocked over and raccoons get into them. So, I mean, pretty much everybody get busted by the commercial, like Nickerson's or whomever. When they give you those things, they're flip-top green or blue receptacles. I mean, they are what they are, and you don't buy them. They give them to you. So I'd be careful about how far down the regulatory road we want to go on this. Putting them away, I'm all in on.
And they have wheels on them.
Yeah, they do. I know. I've been wheeling mine.
Larry?
I think we should pursue it. Nothing more to add. It makes sense to me.
Which it?
And we can, pardon?
Which it? Where they are or what they're made of?
I'm not too concerned about what they're made of. I think we'll let others speak to those details. But if we can control the garbage cans on the streets, we should do that.
Joe?
Agreed.
What do you need from us?
The will of the board. What is the will of the board? Do you want it to be contemplated as a bylaw? If so, do you want it to be contemplated by health?
I would prefer, if I could, well, I'd move with we move this issue to the Board of Health for a discussion on the potential bylaw to
The placement of the
the
receptacle.
placement of the garbage cans
Second.
Placement and timing.
and timing. Thank you, Mary.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe. Next steps concerning traffic and safety issues in the Route 28 corridor of Harwich Port. Joe, I'll let you open this one.
Thank you. I'm just finishing my notes because what the board said on that one was relative to the placement of rubbish containers and the duration outside.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this next item gets to an earlier discussion from earlier parties presenting concerning issues of traffic and general safety issues in and around Route 28. Following that meeting, I assembled representatives from police, fire, and public works to discuss the matter. I then had an opportunity to have a conversation with our representative in the Graydon General Court. And my recommendation is that we pursue this through proper channels. However, I just wanted to inform the board and the public that it's highly unlikely that we would have been able to get anything done for this summer. And I know that Chief Gilmet and others can speak better than I to the difficulty of getting Department of Transportation. So if the board's agreeable, I've outlined a process which I can begin immediately, but with an eye towards the spring and summer of 2023.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering why we would want to wait on the Uber component of this. I mean, we could set up an Uber receiving station in Schoolhouse parking lot to deal with pickups that are part of that community on the Harwich Port. I understand the myriad of problems we have dealing with the state in Route 28, but compounding all that is every 2 or 3 people calling their own Uber, and there's dozens of them at the end of the day. I mean, they're just all over the place.
Joe?
Again, will of the board, if you want, we can bring this back on August 22nd for you to contemplate an action that I can pull together with staff about an Uber/Lyft zone or something to that effect. However, this matter was first brought up under public comment, and it has not been before the board for greater, consideration.
Thank you, Joe. Chief?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dave Gilmet, Chief of Police. We have had discussion on the Uber problem in Harwich Board, especially at closing time. I see Mr. Powell isn't here anymore. However, what we come up with is if we went with that idea, Selectman Howell, across the street, we're going to have more people crossing Route 28. in a poorly lit, heavy trafficked area at closing time. So we would be certainly open to a designated Uber pickup that wouldn't cause more people crossing Route 28. I don't know where that would be, but that was what surfaced in our staff discussion at the PD, is just to leave it alone at this point in time, rather than having our officers direct them over into the school lot to get them off 28, because people will just rush out and get in and they leave, which I think, you know, our discussion said, okay, we'll hold off on trying to fix it over in the school lot. But that's just what we came up with.
Makes sense. Maybe we can make a deal with the church or
That's what I was just thinking.
behind C Street across from the port.
Yeah, something on the same side of the road as those establishments would definitely be safer, in my
We
opinion.
definitely need to do something, but I would agree it's more planning than just deciding.
On the back of Pilgrim?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just saying, I understand about the crossing the road, but I was just saying we need to do something about the Ubers. They don't have to be part of a comprehensive plan for anything, because the counter to your discussion is, okay, do you really want a state route 28 stopped because there's Uber after Uber after Uber picking them up on that side of the road,
Right.
which impedes traffic?
No, so what's the lesser of two evils is basically what we arrived at that temporary.
The church parking lot.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. Just to continue Chief's conversation and about the church, it actually is the property that has Siegel's Ice Cream, Read Books, all of that. I'd be more than happy to reach out to the property manager to talk to them, because there have had some challenges this year already with other things with that parking lot. So I have no problem reaching out and then getting with the town administrator on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hired.
Excellent.
Joe, on your memo, mentioned input from the board. What more input do you need from the board? Do you want individual emails? My problem is lighting and speed. I don't think it doesn't go much further than that, but downtown Chatham, you can't go 35, 40 through downtown Chatham. I mean, I know that, so that's been altered by the state.
So the overall concept of my memo is that we engage in a more thoughtful conversation in the community, starting in the fall or right after Labor Day. And when we talk about discussions, I think it would be helpful that we reach out to community representatives that we've heard from. I see my colleague on the Traffic Advisory Safety Committee as another group, and the stakeholders that are in Harwich Port itself, so that you folks can hear from them and recommendations and suggestions, and then we do a full court press in the fall through our legislative delegation to impress upon Department of Transportation.
When do you contemplate starting that?
I would recommend the meeting right after Labor Day, as far as a formal discussion by the board, to then go into a stakeholders community meeting.
Thank you. Put it on for that agenda, please. Non-resident taxpayer annual meeting. We are into August. The past 2 years, because of the pandemic, we've done this by way of videotape from key department heads, and then it airs on the town website. Does the board want to go back to an actual in-person meeting, or does the board want to continue with that format? Larry?
I like that format because it's available for people to look at their leisure. I would ask if there's a way we can publicize it more than we have in the past. I'm not sure how many people are aware of it. And so I would like to continue that.
Thank you. Don?
I agree with Larry. I know a bunch of non-resident taxpayers, and they feel like they're getting more out of those videos because they're well-prepared and they give detailed information about each individual department than, dare I say it, than the Chatham Town meeting model, which everybody gets together for a special date. I've been through them for years in the early 2000s. I didn't know that they were overly productive.
Mary?
Just one question. Do we have any feedback other than, you know some people? Do we have any feedback from the non-resident taxpayers if they prefer one versus the other?
And I don't.
They're still able to watch that meeting and come to another meeting under the open forum and say whatever they want.
Okay.
Joe, comments on that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any one group or grouping of groups that we would reach out specifically to ask that. I am familiar in a much smaller Cape Cod town where it was a much bigger event. I will tell you that the way we've done it the last several years, there was positive response to it.
The only time I've been at one of the meetings that we've held at night that people that really came was when we were having trouble with all the seaweed on Red River Beach.
Right.
And that filled, because everyone was here to complain. Otherwise, I don't remember a meeting that when we were holding them that people actually attended.
I never remember anyone showing up for it, other than residents.
Then
Joe, can we start the process on department head videos?
Sure.
Thank you. Old business, update on revised license renewal process for 2023 annual renewal season. Joe, do you want to go through that?
I do. I would first say that I will defer and support the memo from staff to just highlight really what's meant to be a streamlined, simpler process for all involved. Certainly as we get into the annual license process, which in August, at this evening, whatever the temperature is, I'm willing to wish time away and now be in August. But this is really an effort by staff dedicated to licensing to suggest a process and get the board's input on the process. And again, I support what's being suggested by staff.
Mary?
yeah, I thought Danielle laid it out pretty nicely, and in it, she indicated that the chief had input, so assuming the chief doesn't have any issues with it, I'm in favor.
Don?
I'm just musing over the one part of the language about whether we're being too cute here, about the premises to be licensed as described herein have been inspected and found to be in compliance. We just went through one tonight that the person didn't sign off on. How are we going to monitor this? Isn't that going to result in a whole bunch of people feeling like they've got to be self-monitoring and showing up to the window and wanting their stuff time-stamped so that they can prove that they got there for the building inspector or whomever? And I'm just concerned about that one aspect. Everything else looks like it's much more streamlined, and even if it's said that have been initially inspected and found to be, if it's a yearly thing, we're making about 30, 40, 50, 60 consumers that may be running after us for how come somebody hasn't signed off on this and how come it's signed off on that.
Comments, Joe?
I'll defer to members first.
Mary?
Don't they get inspected regularly so that if there were an issue, the Board of Health would have
We've had a
noted
horrible
it?
problem with building inspections. They have not been routine.
Joe?
Is that a request to respond to the last comment or generally?
What are your comments on the concern that we're not going to be ready for this?
Well, I think we're going to be ready if we adopted the process this month, because the intent was for it to kick off this month and end with your renewal process in December. With regard to the italicized language in that, I think the points I would want to emphasize is that it was reviewed by council. Both of those statements exist presently, and they're two distinct statements. Now, we don't object to the fact that the applicant has to swear under penalties of perjury that they have filed all of their required taxes. The second step is for them to take ownership of the process, saying that they have confirmed with each of those regulatory departments that they have had the requisite inspections. And really, for me, as with an earlier issue, it's a chance for the applicant to have a direct conversation with the appropriate staff. Now, as with an earlier application, we still have the problem of what happens when the applicant believes one thing, staff believes another, and then it comes to the question of the licensing authority. So again, I stand by the work that Danielle's done. She's worked on it year-round. She's worked with the chief on it. She's worked with council. She's worked with every department that has a process in this. We just need the board to give direction. That's why my standard question this evening and going forward is, we'd like to know what the will of the board is. And if the board wants to know my thoughts, I stand by the proposal as presented.
Thank you. Larry?
My basic feeling is that the community that can reduce regulations and still protect our citizens wins. And so I'm very much in favor of this. Any action we can take to help our businesses move forward in an expedient fashion.
Mary?
I'm with Larry.
Okay. Don, anything further?
Yeah, I mean, you can pass this along, but unless this says I've requested all the inspections, I can't see that you can hold these people accountable for, I mean, we only have plumbing and electrical inspections 2 days out of the week. I'm not sure how you can ride roughshod. Again, this isn't just speculative. We had a real problem with the building department for a long time getting approvals on anything. I could assure myself that these people would just routinely go in, request, get the approval within the month that they requested it, and everything was hunky-dory, then I'd feel differently about this. But I don't know that I want to hold everybody individually responsible for something that we're creating.
If they have to get inspected anyway, I think the onus falls on the business owner, not the town to hold their hand. If they're responsible enough to own a liquor store or a bar, they should be responsible enough to call for their inspection in time.
Who are they gonna call if they don't get it? I mean, right now, we have a regulatory thing with the community development part of upstairs, where they track everything that goes through.
Further comments? I'm for it.
I think we should, I appreciate your comments, Don, but my concern is, well, not my concern, but I would like to move forward, even though there's some risk, as Don, you've mentioned, moving forward, because we're in danger of having two issues that, one is a process we like, and the other one is concerned about how well our departments function. And I would hate to see concerns with the department functions influence or set this aside of a policy we think is correct.
Okay, but I'd like to see us continue to monitor it.
Yeah, well, yeah, agree with that.
Can we put that feedback in there that the board supports it, but they'd like to see some monitoring?
I didn't hear
The
the
board
last part.
supports it, but they'd like to see some monitoring.
Will do.
Thank you. Allen Harbor Jetty Study. John, thanks for staying this long. Memo in the packet speaks for itself. I don't know how much the board has really reread through that, but John's looking for, or we're looking for ultimately, an approval on this so that John can start looking for some money. We know what the problem is. We know what the benefit to the problem is. But if we, as John mentioned in his memo, if there's a catastrophic failure of that jetty, we're going to impede a lot of people from coming in and out of that harbor. That's the general gist of it, right, John? So what's the board's pleasure on this? Any comments, Larry? Mark, I'll get to you in a moment.
Well, I think I've read this, at least the first memo before.
Yes.
So.
It's just time to make a decision. That's why I put it back on.
I would go ahead with John's recommendation.
Don?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything over the past year that would change my mind about that, because we've had people pitching different possibilities, but this works.
Mary?
I agree. I think John presented this pretty well, I don't know, a month or two ago. The only thing I wondered is, one of the things he said in this letter was, once permits are finalized, the town has up to 5 years to start construction. So that gives us a little leeway, but I hesitate to push it too far because no one can predict that storm. So I think we got to move forward.
Thank you, Mary. Mark?
Hi, excuse me, Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. I agree with the Harbor Master's report. The only thing is, and this is from the Harbor Master's report, is that 62% of the moorings and slips in Allen Harbor are for private entities, whether it's the yacht club or the marina. And when you include the private docks there, I don't think it's a reach to say that 70% of the boats that are in that area are private docks. So my question to the Harbor Master and the town administrator, generally when you have such a large expenditure of public money, 2.3 million, that primarily go to private usage, Is there any precedent or any comparisons to other towns that some of the private entities can pitch in to pay this $2.3 million? The fear I would have is for the town to have a catastrophic failure and to be forced to repair that jetty under an emergency procedure and have to pay the whole amount. So I think if you're following what I'm saying, it may be a good idea if you could to start discussions with these private entities to see if there's some cost sharing before a failure occurs. Thank you.
Thank you. John, do you want to comment on that? You don't have to. Don's got plenty to say. He's
We'd like you
covering.
to.
Actually, it has to do with him.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, what I guess compare that question to is what we did when we dredged Allen Harbor, right? We did betterments to help pay for the dredging of the basin. That was back in 2012. That's the first thing that I ever dealt with when I got on board. And that was a multi-year process in permitting and issuance of betterments to get everybody who had a piece of that basin to pay part of that dredge cost. That was the Yacht Club, Allen Harbor Marine, all the private homeowners who had docks. So is it possible, or is there a precedent? I guess I would say that probably is one. That was a huge dollar value, though. We're talking $2 million. I know $2.3 million. I know that's a big number, but nothing in comparison to what we had when we did that dredge project. So, I mean, that was justified. I think if we try to do betterments, I think, or some type of cost share, I mean, we can look at it, but it could be challenging.
And Allen's Harbor pays you, Marine pays the town for their mooring permits.
Permits, too.
Correct.
All their permits.
Right.
And I imagine a fairly hefty tax bill. And
I mean, so every single boat in the marina, in Allen Harbor Marine, in the Yacht Club, if they're on a slip, they pay a waterway user fee. They pay the town every year to utilize that waterway. And there's also moorings that are assigned to these private entities, the Yacht Club and the marina, and they pay the mooring fees for those as well. So, I mean, their boaters are helping with us dredging it every year. You know, part of that money that we get for moorings and user fees that goes into a separate receipts reserve fund that is set up for the maintenance of our waterways. So it is going directly to help maintain the waterways.
Thank you, John.
Currently.
Don, go ahead.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
This goes back a long way. I mean, we went through a hellish process with the harbor management plan in the early 2000s, and the state was adamant. Now, let me run this past you again. We licensed these people to have the moorings there in the fields, but the state maintains and alleges that the sand under the water is the Commonwealth's, and that they have jurisdiction over this stuff. So I don't know how far we can push this. We are getting a revenue stream out of this because they don't own the mooring fields. They own a license to operate the mooring fields, and we get paid for them to do that with the understanding that they don't own them.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, the harbor master's authority permits those moorings. They're all town permitted moorings. They're not privately owned by the Yacht Club or Marine or anything, and you're absolutely right. That's state waters, and state Mass General Law allows towns that have established a harbor master to permit those, and you have to register those. All those moorings within the town are registered. So it's a good point. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Only thing I wanted to say.
Thank you. Larry, anything further?
No, nothing.
Mary?
Thank you, John.
No.
So the action from the board would be to proceed with the $2.3 million option and start the work.
Okay, and again, you know, I'll let the engineer know, we already have funding for them to go through final design and the permitting, so we have money to do that. We'll get to that point. It may be 9 months or 10 months before we have permits in hand. So we would be looking down the line at least a couple of years to do construction.
Yeah, which will give us time.
Yes, sir.
We can make a final decision at any point, right?
Right.
The catastrophic failure is the hard one, because right now the sand seems like everybody welcomes the sand and the dredging every year for our own beaches, but we also, it's like we brought in 130,000 in revenue from selling the sand.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the
I
conundrum.
mean, I take some, we heard from the town engineer, the contracted engineer, GI Consulting. They do a lot of this type of work. And I didn't hear him say that there was an emergent need. Yes, it needs to be done, and I think if we wait too long, that could be problematic, but I just don't think we're there, based upon his professional expertise.
Seems like we have plenty of time to decide. And then, John, if you just give some more thought to the cost sharing, I think it'd be a conversation that the board probably would like to have. But
Okay.
I'm not stuck on it because I believe they're already paying for it. And we're not gonna let that channel close up regardless.
Right, and that's the important part, yeah. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
All right, review and possible approved draft articles for September 27th, 2022 special town meeting. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have some information in your packet. I will first start out by telling you that I had a conversation with our cemetery administrator, and she is requesting, and I would recommend, that we put the kibosh on Article 7. There is a public hearing process that needs to take place, and that process will probably negate us having this come before the special. So it is a request of staff to have Article 7 removed from the draft warrant.
Joe, can I just, on that, can we urge them to have this public hearing sooner rather than later, since this
So I
gets
have
put
done
off
that.
every year?
Correct, I have done that. They are contemplating a special hearing in September at a time that has them check off all the requirement elements. So once we have that, we have a better understanding that we can do it in the Springtown meeting.
Publicize that, though.
Say again?
We make sure we publicize that, though, because there's nothing as touchy as changing cemetery regulations. I don't want to roll into a town meeting where we held a public hearing and nobody showed up, so we're recommending this.
Well, I am happy to say Dana DeCosta supports this.
He's been against everything so far.
He has been against it.
But Don is right. It astounds me how
Oh, man.
sensitive people are about the cemetery.
Okay, Joe?
I'm dead, I'm not caring.
Mary,
One
go
other
ahead.
thing on that, when they bring that back, can the cemetery people show us what the changes are?
Yeah, anytime we do a regulation, generally,
Yeah.
we do our track changes. Because cemetery regulations require town meeting action, we'll have a current copy, a track changes, red line copy, and a future copy.
Okay, because I looked at that, it looked fine, but I don't know what it used to be.
Right, yep, for that very purpose.
Okay, thank you.
And then, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, go back to the draft, what I first referred to as draft articles and/or topics. The first thing I want to emphasize is Article 1, and I'm hopeful that the articles that I've laid them out, I think in this order, would remain, but we can deal with that on the 22nd. I want to emphasize, and we have our wastewater superintendent here to speak to it more directly, but there's two elements that are in play with Article 1. Is first regarding the acquisition of property interests and appropriations for Phase 3 wastewater project, which is the second thing listed. And then there's the same for the Route 28 dry sewer project. So you'll see in the materials that we have addresses listed. However, I just want to inform the board that any further conversation on this article may necessitate executive session, because you may have to develop a strategy on acquisition of land beyond just straight up easements that we've done in the past. To that end, I believe it's a fair estimate to say that we look at the Phase 3 elements to be roughly $70,000 in cost to the town. And again, if the town wishes to proceed on the other element of the project, that cost will be determined after discussion with the board in executive session.
Thank you. Comments from the board, Larry?
Well, I'm going to follow the recommendation of our wastewater and water superintendent and suggest we put this on the town warrant.
Don, any comments? Mary?
I thought we already voted on the Route 28 project. Didn't we already do that?
I think you're right.
Good evening, Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent. So yes, the town did vote to appropriate funds for the design of that dry pipe. What we're looking to do now is actually solidify where we're going to be putting that pump station, because that's integral to that design.
Oh, okay. So it's the next step.
Yeah, and really that's going to determine which way the pipe pitches in the
Okay.
design, so we can get to hopefully construction appropriation in the spring.
Then I'm fine with both.
Okay,
Hopefully it'll pitch down.
go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Next article that's contemplated, this is a topic right now, whereas Article 1, that is substantially the language that we expect the article to be, but again, it will come back to you on the 22nd of August. Article 2, that if the board's agreeing to have this in the warrant, I would work with the council on to frame out the particulars, but the purpose, so what you see there for a draft topic under Article 2, I would imagine would become the explanation for the actual article. And so the purpose of that article is to appropriate funds to support a comprehensive review of the town's current code. And our code is comprised of the Harwich Charter, the general bylaws, and the zoning bylaws. The goal of the review is to recommend changes to the two elements of the code referenced above, with matters being presented beginning at the next annual town meeting in 2023. The recommended cost is $75,000, and that's a price not to exceed. That tells the RFP-bearing world that the town puts a value on this greater than $50,000 and requires us to seek bids or proposals.
Thank you, Joe. Beginning conversation on this, so Don.
No, there are three elements. Charter bylaw isn't in a position really to look at all the zoning bylaws, all the general bylaws, all at one time. So, I mean, it would be nice to have some comprehensive review just periodically to make sure that everything's going. the way it
Yeah,
should.
Joe couldn't tell me, and I couldn't find the last time we did any comprehensive review at all on the charter.
The charter, it was 1989, so, and then there was another comprehensive rewrite in 2006 with Winnie Abaska. But this doesn't just pertain to the charter, it pertains to everything. And if you look at the code of the town of Harwich, that's a pretty thick document, of which the charter is this much, and the bylaws are a lot more.
Larry?
No, I think it's a no-brainer. We need to move ahead.
I agree, makes sense.
And then further on that one, Mr. Chairman, I have been to the last two meetings of the Bylaw Charter Review Committee. I mentioned this concept back in June, and they were very receptive to it.
Excellent.
Article number 3, again, right now, this is a draft topic. This is me, again, self-reporting. You may recall that the capital outlay plan for fiscal year 2023 had this line item in it, but I neglected to have a companion article for it. So the necessity of this is because we are continuing working on Brooks Academy renovation, but the scope of the renovations are such that it's expected to exceed $1 million, and under state procurement laws, when you have a construction project, be it new building or renovation, that exceeds $1 million, you should have, or you must have, an owner's project manager. This article would complete what we contemplated in May, and which was actually voted in the plan. And again, the cost on that is estimated to be $250,000 for that work and related work.
Thank you. Mary, anything on that?
No, I don't totally understand if we already voted on it, why we're doing this, but I trust you know what you're doing.
Sure, well, careful with that last comment, but, because I was the one that forgot the article. So under Harwich's rules on how we operate, the capital outlay plan, which is the 5-year plan, was adopted. There was a reference in that in fiscal year 23 for this project, but there was no resultant companion article that would have specifically appropriated the money.
Okay.
So this
gotcha.
this would be that appropriation article.
Okay, thank you.
Don?
Just to say that the ship has already sailed on the discussion about this, whether this is our flagship historic museum building. We've decided it is. We've decided we're going to do this work. And this is the appropriate way to make sure that the money is being spent properly, to have a project manager.
Larry?
Go ahead.
Okay, Joe?
Article 4, the topic on that is to appropriate fiscal year 2022 agreement that was struck this evening with the SEIU, aka Managers Union. We're still working on the cost, but we do not see it exceeding any of the years that are related to the 3-year. The first year of the 3-year contract is already funded, as you may recall, under 2022 Annual Town Meeting, Article 4. So that dollar amount will be coming soon. It's a very straightforward article, and again, the purpose is to fund the negotiated contract. Council emphasizes that because it is not whether the contract should be approved. Contract's been approved by both parties, now we just need to get the money.
I think we're all right on that one.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Article 5, this draft topic relates to 2 positions in the town. First, the town engineer position, which is a member position under the SEIU collective bargaining agreement, and as you know, remains vacant. And my stated reason for that is because the town has had the position of surveyor on the books for quite some time. However, the town has also had it on the books for the last 4 years and has not funded it. And so now that we have space available for an engineer and a surveyor, because you may recall our last engineer did not have a surveyor, rather he had a $5,000 line item to hire a surveyor. I was able to confirm with the Harwich Employees Association that while the position has been vacated, they would like to see it filled, but that is not a union request, it's a management request. If I'm to have any success securing a town engineer, which is my fervent desire within fiscal year 23, we should fund that companion position, the surveyor, which would report to the engineer. Again, for me, for the last 2 years, the issues were no funding in the operating budgets and no place to put them. And now that we have space in 204 Sisson Road, not to suggest that they would necessarily go there, but we have the ability to move folks around. So that's why I'm asking the board to consider that. I have done some preliminary cost estimates, and I want to emphasize that these are merely for the line item that would be for the surveying department, and it is only for salaries and minimal office wages, office expenses, and that amount would not exceed $65,000. What is not factored in that are the other fringe benefits, the impact on OPEB, health insurance, and others. However, with the various changes, retirements, and things that we've seen, I know that we have money available in those present line items. So it'd be more of an impact on future years' budgets.
Any comments, Larry?
None.
Don?
It's almost impossible to find a surveyor commercially. It'd be really nice to have one back again in our fold.
Mary?
Yeah, everything the trust talks about is
Surveyor.
pending surveyor. I'm totally on board.
Proceed.
And then, thank you, last comment on that is we need to get the dynamic duo back and actually have them both fully funded so that the engineer can rely upon the surveyor and the surveyor can draw a salary that would entice someone to be one.
Okay.
And then last but not least, this was actually the original article for the whole contemplation of an annual town, of a special town meeting, and that is to reallocate the funds that were appropriated at the 2022 annual town meeting, specifically related to the Monomoy Regional School District. So you know that the regional agreement was amended. DESI approved that. So the town is looking at a cost savings presently of $739,747. We're going to have that figure confirmed by Dr. Carpenter and Mr. McMillan in the school department. In addition to that, as I made you aware earlier, we were informed by representatives of Cape Cod Regional Technical District that we and other member towns were receiving a rebate, which I know our finance director, Anne Marie Ellis, is listening to me, and I know that the way that I would say it is that it's a cost savings, and that dollar amount was $183,394. So the total that the town would be looking to reallocate would be no more than $923,141. However, as our finance director is working night and day, quite literally, to close out our books for fiscal year 22, we're not in a position to offer statements as to where we are with funds available, other than these funds that we know to be available. That is to say that as we build out the warrant between now and August 22nd, which is the date by which we would need to close it to publish it, to meet all of our charter obligations, if the town relied upon those two funding sources, again, there may be more, but we don't know them yet, but where do you fund all of the articles, it comes to $510,000. Now, that does not include that item that would need to be debated in executive session. There may be other fund sources for that, but that dollar amount is not contemplated in the total I gave. If we funded everything else, we would have just over $413,000 left. Article 6 would either contemplate a reallocation of the full dollar amount or a lesser dollar amount if we use the funding. But that's the purpose of that article, is to reallocate some of those funds, if not all of them.
Larry?
No, that's our obligation, is now to decide where we reallocate it. And that doesn't mean they go specific line item actions, they can go back into reserve funds or what.
Correct, right. We could, reallocate to reserve funds. We could do anything for stabilization, special
Stabilization funds,
stabilization.
So we have options available to us.
Correct,
so.
absolutely. Yep. But that article would be the generator for wherever it's going.
Exactly.
Don?
I'm just going to go in a slightly different direction. I want to thank Mary publicly for her diligent representation of our position in the negotiations to get to this point.
Thank you.
Mary?
No, and I assume there's no limit on what we can do with those monies. You know, in terms of,
Well, the finance director, town accountant will tell us there are certain limits, but we have an ample range of options to where we could place it, or where we could reallocate it, absolutely.
I'm just thinking, you know, we're looking at a huge wastewater ticket coming at us. And I'm always interested in housing, and if we take care of the details of the rest of these articles, then we can put those funds wherever we like. Oh,
Agreed, and to your point, I think what you're saying is a year ago, last year's special in the fall, created the special purpose stabilization funds for wastewater and for housing. Now, that also goes with the change in the short-term rental tax. So those two special purpose stabilization funds are going to start receiving funds after January of 2023, when that tax increase goes in on the short-term rental. But that does not prevent the board from reallocating other sources into those if we wanted to. And so that's why I say we have a number of options on how we can reallocate funds.
Well, we also can give the money back, correct, to the taxpayers?
Not a direct rebate per se.
But we're doing this now, and we called this meeting so that we hadn't set the tax rate yet, correct?
Correct. So what we would want to do is make sure that any of the cost savings that are out there, and I'm going to say the word once and not say it again, it's not a surplus, rather these are cost savings for earlier appropriations. Given the size of them, we would want to reallocate them before you go through your process of setting the tax rate.
Proposed to reallocate.
I think the short answer is yes to your question.
Yeah.
They
Could
gave it to us.
you imagine giving the money back to the tax, have we ever done that?
Yeah, once, but not in this manner.
No, it's your failed override.
Look forward to the conversation.
So then, Mr. Chairman, members of the, sorry.
Go ahead.
would it be appropriate for you and probably Anne Marie together to give us recommendations where you think it should best be placed?
I think it's very appropriate.
I would defer to the board on that by saying, certainly you should be able to rely upon your town administrator and your finance director, town accountant for our recommendations. In addition to that, I would also be willing to give you a list of other funds or accounts that could accept this. But I'm always ready to offer my recommendations.
Good.
Don?
Just putting that aside for a second, there's the issue of this is ongoing. So next year, we are going to have the relationship that this ponders going forward between the elementary schools, so that when we appropriate, because that's not an override situation, that's an allocation of the cost of the regional agreement.
Yes, future years, we feel that we have a more accurate understanding of our obligation, and we do not anticipate that causing an
Within
additional
our
cost
levy.
savings.
So what Michael was saying is for this year.
Right. All right. Anyone want to hear any more from Dan Pelletier before he might want to run out of here on that article, or are we all set for now?
I'm set.
I'm set.
I'm always good to hear from Dan, but not
Anything
tonight.
we can do to move this thing forward so that we stay first in line for funding at the county would be a nice thing.
Agreed. Joe, anything else on that?
Just that if the board is agreeable with the topics, that you vote to direct staff to create warrant articles based on these topics, and that will come back for your vote on August 22nd to finalize the warrant.
I move that we translate all of these recommendations for the 6 proposed warrant articles into final form.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Does that get you where you need to be, Joe?
Precisely.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
Thank you.
Motion on contract 1.
I move that we approve the memorandum of agreement between Barnstable County through its Cape Cod Commission and the Board of Selectmen on behalf of the town of Harwich for the taking of 5 owners unknown parcels of the land in the amount of $94,168.99.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, there's several references within the materials to DRI, and I wanted to just put out there for the general public that DRI is an acronym that means Development of Regional Impact. So these are DRI funds that the town was able to get through mitigations through Cape Cod Commission, working on significant development projects in the town. And so I think it's a great use by our wastewater superintendent, and I can say that because I agreed with him 2 years ago when we talked about it. But that's what DRI stands for.
Great work.
Great. Thank you. And great work, Dan.
Yes.
Contract B?
So you still need to vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
And, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the contract between Larshell Construction Incorporated for the replacement of the Brooks Free Library roof in the amount of $131,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Larry. Moved by Don, seconded by Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then, Mr. Chairman, very quickly, in your packet, you did not have the post-procurement checklist. That was finalized by our finance director, and it's on the top of the document that you're being asked to sign.
Town Administrator's report.
Unfortunately, I have several, but I'll try to be exceedingly brief and quick. First, I shared with the board an email that I received from my counterpart in New Orleans, John Kelly, Town Administrator, and it's regarding a fertilizer home rule petition that the Town of Orleans is seeking at their special town meeting in October of this year. It follows on a home rule petition in the Town of Nantucket that was approved to create a bylaw that was then sent to the Attorney General. So I wanted to make the board aware of that in case the board is interested in that topic generally. I will say, however, that the Town of Nantucket has not yet received final blessing on that from the Attorney General, but on behalf of my colleague John Kelly in Orleans, I wanted to meet his request and sharing that with the board for your consideration at a future meeting. In no particular order, happy birthday and congratulations to our chamber director, and again, the magazine that she produced single-handedly is phenomenal, and I've actually already read it. I want to offer my congratulations to the Harwich Mariners.
Quizzing, don't you think, Cindy?
To the Harwich Mariners, who for the second year in a row made it to the playoffs, and for the second year in a row lost to Brewster. All I can say is I'm a fan of the East Division, so go Whitecaps. I participated in the One Cape Summit last week and found it invigorating for many reasons, not the least of which is we met in public, we were around people, we talked business, and of course it was in the town of Harwich at Wauquasit, which any chance I get to go there I'm going to take. And last but by no means least, the board this evening, you ratified 2 contracts, so I want to take an opportunity first to thank the negotiating teams of those 2 collective bargaining unions. First to IMAW, to Dana Milan and Dave Nicholson. I want to thank them with their representative from the Teamsters, Mike DeCoco. I think I got Mike's name right. They were worthy partners across the table, and I appreciate their efforts every step of the way, and I'm glad we were able to come to an agreement to the benefit of their members. And similarly for SEIU, they were led by the SEIU president, Amy Usowski. She was joined by Heinz Croft and Jamie Goodwin. Later, they were joined by Joan Caruso, business agent from SEIU. So certainly my thanks go to my counterparts in that group. because we came to agreement, and it is great that we have these agreements for 3 years. And last but not least, if I'm thanking folks, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Megan Eldridge, my direct right hand and counterpart for the other folks across the table for the work that she's done day in and day out on these agreements, and we're by no means done, but we're gaining great traction. So a special thanks to Megan, as well as to Labor Council David Jenkins and our newcomer Anne Marie Ellis. So thanks to everybody, because as Labor Council reminds me, signed contracts mean labor peace, and we're getting there. And I'm grateful for that for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Selectmen's report, Larry?
Nothing.
Don? Mary?
Nothing.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.